What's going on, everybody? It's RoarYG coming at you with a brand new video. And I know that I've done a lot of bird up videos, not just in general, but especially in the past couple of months. However, today is going to be a little bit different because today I wanted to do something a little bit more special, and that is a full in-depth, and I mean very in-depth breakdown on the deck, how to play it, the ratios, my current build and how I use it, and a bunch of different combos. I have 10 combos listed on a sheet right now. Some pros to the deck, some cons to the deck, mostly for the format, some alternative cards you can play. Basically, I'm going to be trying to go over literally every single important aspect of the deck, or at least in my best attempt that I can. I'm not the best at this kind of stuff. I haven't done an in-depth video since my Mermel Atlantean video, which actually ended up being the third most viewed video on my channel, and it keeps creeping up there even more, so I'm really grateful for that. That one actually ended out really well, but I'm really nervous about this one because I've noticed a lot of people are a little bit critical on my bird up stuff, but trust me when I say that bird up is literally the one deck that I think people can trust me with. This is the only thing that I've ever played where I can confidently say I know at least the majority of what I'm doing. And I've had a lot of different people ask for a really in-depth breakdown like this, and so I don't want to disappoint. I don't want to waste any more time either. I'm going to start off first with the deck profile, the explanations for every ratio and everything, and what the cards do. But I don't want to waste any more time though. Let's go ahead and get right into my in-depth bird up breakdown for January 2023, so let's get started. So starting us off, we have, of course, the Lyrilusc Monsters, which make up the bird portion of the bird up deck. Starting off with 3 copies of Lyrilusc Turquoise Warbler, 3 copies of Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow, 2 copies of Lyrilusc Celestine Wagtail, 2 copies of Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallow, and 2 copies of Lyrilusc Beryl Canary. I want to apologize if my microphone sounds a little bit weird. I have it at a really awkward angle. I'm kind of half standing up right now to do this because my camera is so high up. But anyways, let's go ahead and break down each of the Lyrilusc monsters step by step. So starting off, we have Lyrilusc Turquoise Warbler. So no matter what build or what game plan or what playstyle you're going for bird up, this is indisputably the only one that you need to mandatory play 3 of because she is probably the best one to start with. She says if you control no monsters, you can special summon her from her hand, and that is an inherent summon, not an activated effect. And if she is special summoned from the hand, you can special summon 1 Lyrilusc monster from your hand or your graveyard, and that effect is a hard once per turn. So there is a variety of reasons why Turquoise Warbler is super strong. So not only, again, is it an inherent summon to special from the hand, it is also not a once per turn, meaning that if your opponent negates and destroys it, while you won't be able to get the other effect to special summon from hand or grave, you can still special summon a different one from your hand, which gives you an additional free body on board, which is really crucial when going for Xyz plays or for Link 2 plays. As well, being able to special summon from hand or graveyard any of your Lyrilusc monsters is amazing because not only does it not target the thing in the graveyard, meaning that it's very hard for your opponent to use, say, an Xyz card when you have a bunch of different names engraved, but it's also really good because it basically doubles the amount of ways you can combo, because not only can you open, Turquoise Warbler and then one of the ones that you want to special summon, but you can also open Turquoise Warbler in any way to send the thing that you want to special summon. So it basically prevents you from having to open a very specific 2-card combo, similar to something like Drytron, I guess you could say in a sense. She's basically the heart and soul of almost every single combo that I will be mentioning later on in the video, and without her, the deck definitely would not be nearly as playable. Next up, we have Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow, which is the only other one that I play 3 copies of. So Cobalt Sparrow falls under the line of the monsters that must be special summoned to get their effects, but do not have their own special summoning condition. Basically, these 2 are the same, in terms of that, sorry. And then these 2 fall under the special summons a Lyrilusc monster but doesn't do anything itself if it's special summoned. And then Turquoise Warbler kind of falls under both because it can special itself and then also special summons a different thing if it's special summoned. So basically, you got 1 that does both, 2 that trigger on special summon, and 2 that special summon other things. But Cobalt Sparrow says that if she is special summoned, from anywhere, by the way, not just from hand, unlike Turquoise, you can actually 1-for-1 her or revive her from the graveyard to trigger the effect, but you can add 1 level 1 Wing Beast from your deck to your hand, any level 1 Wing Beast, and also a Wind Xyz that used her on the field as material gains the effect that it cannot be targeted by the opponent's card effects. So Cobalt Sparrow is arguably the second best Lyrilusc monster, or the best depending on who you ask, because she just does so much in 1 card. So with only 2 effects, she single-handedly manages to have some of the strongest effects in the entire deck. So on summon, being able to add any level 1 Wing Beast is one of the main things that keeps this deck together, because not only are you able to search your other Lyrilusc monsters, but you can also search your Tri-Brigade Nerval, as well as things like DD Crow, of course. But being able to search Nerval is what ties the entire deck together, and otherwise they wouldn't nearly be as playable, at least in terms of a combo sense. The second effect may also seem a bit weird in that it gives the Xyz monster an effect. However, it is actually pretty common with the Lyrilusc monsters, and in fact falls under these 3 triangular section of the Lyrilusc monsters, in that if they are used on the field as material for a Wind Xyz, that Wind Xyz gains a certain effect. And keep in mind that this does not require the material to still be under. It's not like, I think the Zodiacs, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Zodiacs say that while it's as material under something, you can detach the material to use that effect. Sorry, they're actually like half similar. So the monster itself does gain the effect, however, it must have this card as material. But when it comes to the Lyrilusc stuff, that actually doesn't matter. Like, it can literally be on field, use as material, that monster gains the effect, and then you can detach the material and the effect will still stay. So basically, you can easily just go into one of your Lyrilusc Xyz, or any Wind Xyz technically, but you only play Lyrilusc in terms of the Wind Xyz monsters. But then you can detach her and then still have the targeting protection on your monster, which is absolutely fantastic, especially against certain decks like Tier, which have a really hard time outing things that can't be targeted and also can't be destroyed by battle, which we'll get into much later. But also keep in mind that because it gives the effect to the monster and not as the material itself, if your opponent uses something like, say, Forbidden Droplet, the monster is now able to be targeted because it loses all of its effects when it's Forbidden Dropleted, and so that includes the effect that it cannot be targeted that's given to it by Cobalt Sparrow. I've seen literally every single ratio of Cobalt from 1 to 3, and honestly, I'd say it's kind of up to preference. I have tinkered with 2 as well as 3, and I found that 3 is definitely the best, even though she can be a little bit clunky sometimes, but she's just so damn important for your combos, being the best one to have for your combos, even though there are alternatives. And especially in a current format such as this, where your opponent's playing a lot of different graveyard hate, and is probably going to be getting rid of a lot of the Cobalts in your graveyard, it's definitely not advised, in my opinion, to play any less than 2, but I just prefer 3 myself. You can go ahead and experiment yourself. So next up is the other Lyrilusc monster that triggers on a special summon, that being Lyrilusc Celestine Wagtail. So she says that if she is special summoned, you can add a Lyrilusc spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and also if she's in your graveyard, you can target a Lyrilusc Xyz you control and attach her to that target as material, and that is a hard once per turn. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that the effect to search on Cobalt is also a hard once per turn. So Celestine is a bit of an interesting case, because while she does almost the exact same thing as Cobalt in a vacuum, it's overall a bit different when you go into the actual like depth of the combos, because adding the spell that I'm gonna mention later is a Bird Call. Adding the spell is basically like a gateway to access most of your combos anyway. However, in certain situations, Cobalt would be like a much better thing to have, especially when it comes to having multiples, because Celestine on its own doesn't really do much compared to Cobalt, which even if you do search off a Cobalt already and then you have another one, you can at least give targeting protection to your monster, which is nice. But Celestine is still a really good card. Being able to attach yourself from grave is another big thing, because not only does it help you in gaining access to like Zeus, for example, but it also helps you get extra follow-up with your Lyrilusc Recital Starling, which I'll talk about later, but helps you get more searches if you can attach a material to it again and it stays on field. But it's also really good for going for OTKs, as you'll see with Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale. I'm also just assuming, by the way, that people that are watching this don't know the cards. You probably do overall, but like, I'm just explaining it as if they don't know for the people that don't know. And if you do know, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, so I hope it doesn't bother you too much. I've seen Celestine run at every ratio except for 3. I mean, actually, I think I played 3 of her back when I was playing Bird Up like ages ago. That's wild. But Celestine I've seen from like 0 to 2, and honestly, again, this is up to preference. I say absolutely play at least 1 bare minimum, especially if you're playing 3 Cobalt, you can definitely get away with 1 Celestine. But again, I do like having that number of bodies, specifically due to like the Ishizu cards putting things back. I want to have as many different names as possible, and opening Celestine half the time is actually really good as opposed to bad, and so I feel like playing 2 is perfectly great. Next up is Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallows. So this starts off the Lyrilusc monsters that don't do anything when they themselves are special summon, but they can special summon other Lyrilusc from like hand, grave, etc. So that makes them very crucial as well. So Sapphire Swallow says, if you control a winged beast type monster, you can special summon this card and any other level 1 winged beast directly from your hand, and a Wind Xyz that uses her on field as material can, on Xyz summon, target a Lyrilusc monster in the graveyard and attach it to this card as material. So there are a number of different things to talk about with Sapphire. So being able to special summon herself and another thing from hand is fantastic, because it can basically turn her like a Cobalt or a Celestine and like literally any normal summon of a Wing Beast into full combo. It's also really good for just getting extra materials out for an Xyz summon. It's also great for Link summoning as well, especially because you can summon something like a Tri-Brigade Nerval, and it's basically going to be the main thing triggering a lot of your effects other than Turquoise herself. Her second effect is also very interesting because, again, much like with Celestine earlier, attaching extra materials is really fantastic for certain cards in your extra deck, but it's also really interesting that this effect is actually not a once per turn. So if you have multiple Sapphires on field and you overlay and you have like 2 different Lyriluscs engraved, you can actually attach both of them from your graveyard for absolutely free. So while that doesn't come up like too often, at least not in Bird Up, in pure Lyrilusc it actually comes up a lot. But in Bird Up, it doesn't come up like the most often, but it has come up a few times for me before, especially when it comes to pushing for game. I've seen some people not run Sapphire at all, which I think just isn't really good. I've seen some people like run literally only Turquoise and Cobalt, which I mean, at that point, you're just playing like Tri-Brigade, except you're getting Nerval immediately. Like, it's like similar to playing like a Small World package or something. Like, you're just adding a little bit of extra consistency. But I think at least bare minimum, 1 Sapphire is perfectly fine. You can absolutely get away with 1 Sapphire. I personally liked the second because I actually bumped her back up to 2 from 1 when I started playing Desires a couple formats ago. I think this was when Tier just came out. It was like Power of the Elements format. I was actually playing Desires in the deck to get a little bit of extra consistency and extension through hand traps and disruptions. And I mainly just like having the second one for the follow-up, or at least for opening her, because opening her is actually really good. It does suck when you don't have enough things in hand to actually use her effect. However, opening her is awesome for playing through hand traps, because you can have a situation where like your Nerval gets impermed or something after you use like, I don't know, Fraktall, and then you just go ahead and activate Sapphire in hand, special 2 monsters, and then boom, you go full combo anyway. Finally, for the last main deck Lyrilusc monster, we have Lyrilusc Beryl Canary. Lyrilusc Beryl Canary is probably one of my favorite ones, and it disappoints me that Celestine ended up getting the ultra rare slot and Beryl Canary got the rare. I hate rares so much. It's like the worst rarity in the game. But anyways, she says if she is in your hand, you can target a Lyrilusc monster in your graveyard, special summon both this card and that monster. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except Xyz monsters. You can only use this effect of Beryl Canary once per turn. By the way, all of these are hard once per turns, except for the second effects, which I should have mentioned. But also, the second effect is that a Wind Xyz gains the effect that it gains 200 attack flat, and also it cannot switch possession. So Beryl Canary is another really interesting one because, again, she does not trigger on special summon, but she's arguably one of the strongest ones to go for despite locking you into Xyz. So, fun fact about Beryl Canary, when you activate her effect and you target a thing engraved, because of her wording, even if your opponent say like Called Bys or DD Crows or Shizu's back the target from your graveyard, she actually still hits the board herself because she says special both of them and not special this and then that one. And so if you have another level 1 already on board and you activate Beryl Canary, even if they get rid of the target in the graveyard, you'll still at least have those 2 level 1s on board, meaning that you can just easily go for your rank 1 plays. Also, the lock into Xyz is very harsh. However, because it says Xyz period and not specifically like Wind Xyz or like Lyrilusc Xyz or something like that, it makes her at least a bit more versatile, especially for pure Lyrilusc. But even for this build, you can still end on, like, if you open Cobalt Sparrow and Beryl Canary, maybe it also works with Celestine, I don't know. But if you open like Cobalt and Beryl Canary, you can actually still end on like 5 disruptions and protection, which is pretty fantastic because it doesn't lock you into a very specific Xyz type. The second effect is also pretty neat because the 200 attack difference only like matters for OTKs when it comes to Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale specifically, but the possession switching doesn't really seem very like good. It just seems a bit niche. However, it's not like it hurts it by being there. It's actually helped me a few times, mainly due to Triple Tactics talent. So I've had a lot of people, when I'm trying to stall out with Assembled Nightingale, or when I have like an Ensemblue Robin, they'll try to triple T steal my Ensemblue or my Assembled, and then like the look on their face when I tell them that they cannot take it is just so damn funny to me. Beryl Canary is yet again another one that you can optionally run at literally any number. I used to play her at 3 like ages ago, back when the Xyz lock really didn't matter, but you can play her anywhere from like 0 to 2. I'd recommend at least 1, especially if you're not playing the Revolt package anymore, or if you're just not playing it, period. I personally have cut the Revolt package, therefore Beryl Canary is a bit stronger for me, but she's also really good for extension, especially when going second. This card is an absolute beast, or I should say it's a wing beast, but I really like Beryl Canary. She's probably one of my favorite Lyrilusc. The Xyz lock is just a bit unfortunate because it does clash with other cards in the deck. So from what I've mentioned, you can probably see that this is a pretty high bird ratio. I actually play, let's see, 3, 6, 8, 10, 12, as opposed to most people's like 5 to like 9 at most. And I've had a lot of people like say that to me. Like I've had a lot of comments saying you're playing way too many birds, cut down on these ratios, but I've honestly seen nothing but success with the amount of birds that I'm playing. There are times when I do want to cut down like a little bit. Again, I was playing Sapphire at one point. I was playing Cobalt at 2 actually. I was practicing with 2 Cobalt for the for Tenki when it came to 3. I was thinking about it. I was just like, what if I played 2 Cobalt if Tenki came to 3? Because it was before Tenki came to 3. And honestly, I'd say as long as you're playing at least a medium-sized bird engine, anywhere from like, I'd say like at least, 3 Turquoise, I'd play at least 2 Cobalt, and then at least 1 of each of these. You don't really have to play Beryl Canary, but I'd recommend it personally. Like at least 1 is so good for going second. So as long as it's like 3, like 2, 1, 1, maybe 1, like I won't really bat much of an eye, but like if you're one of those people that plays like 3 Turquoise, 1 Cobalt, and then like a bird call or something, I'm gonna like strangle you. I think a lot of people like focus a bit too much on the Tri-Brigade portion and then use the Lyrilusc as like a small swarming engine or like a Zeus engine, whereas I really think that both archetypes should work together in harmony. I feel like both of them have a lot of different strengths going for each other, even if you only open one of them. Granted, opening only Tri-Brigades is a little better than opening only Lyrilusc, going first at least, but I think both of them are just about as equally strong as each other, and I think that they're both warranted to play at least a good size package. So next up, we are on to the Tri-Brigade portion of the deck. So this is actually, I think, a little smaller, but it is arguably a little bit stronger. But it is 3 copies of Tri-Brigade Fraktall, 3 copies of Tri-Brigade Nerval, 2 copies of Tri-Brigade Kit, and 2 copies of Tri-Brigade Karis. So I said it was a bit small, but it's actually, I think, a little bit bigger than most people's engines, including one of my older engines, but I will explain it, of course, as always. So again, you probably do know at least what these cards do on a base level, but again, I will be explaining it for those that don't. So basically, Too Long Didn't Read, all of the Tri-Brigade monsters in the main deck have the effect that you can banish any number of Beasts, Beast Warriors, or Wing Beasts from your graveyard, which I may end up abbreviating as BBW, don't think about it the wrong way. That's just something that I picked up from the Kali effect and is kind of like a force of habit. But you can banish any number of Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast from your graveyard to special summon directly from your extra deck a Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast Link monster with a Link rating equal to the number that are banished. They do not have to match, like you don't have to banish Wing Beast to summon a Wing Beast or anything like that. You can banish any combination and any number that you'd like as long as you have a Link monster that matches the rating, which I think goes up to 5 now? Yeah, I think it goes up to 5 because we're getting Bucephalus and Photon Hypernova, even though that card kind of sucks. And these effects are very interesting because they're sort of a way of quote-unquote cheating out Link monsters from the extra deck, basically using your graveyard kind of as material, which I think is actually a very interesting mechanic and is actually what made them like quote-unquote broken for like a good while. Like they were actually super strong, of course, in Zodiac Tri-Brigade when it came out, or when Tri-Brigade came out, sorry, and then ended up being tier 1 and literally the best deck for like, I think a good year once Lightning Overdrive released. Keep in mind that while it does special summon them directly from the extra deck, it does not count as, say, like a Link summon. It does not count as a proper summon, meaning that not only will you not get the effects of monsters that say, if this card is Link summoned, do whatever, but it also doesn't count as a proper summon for, say, like Monster Reborn. Like, if you summon something, send it to the graveyard, you cannot Monster Reborn it because it was not properly special summoned first, it was not properly Link summoned, and that actually does come up for things like Tri-Brigade Revolt, which is very important to keep note of, but it is still a really good way of cheesing out non-generic Link monsters in a generic sense. So I'll kind of like show this a little bit ahead of time, but for example, Ancient Warrior Oath Double Dragon Lords requires 2 Beast Warriors, including a Wind Ancient Warriors monster, which of course we're not playing in this deck. This isn't Bird Up featuring Ancient Warriors. It's really just super nice because you can just banish 2 from your graveyard and get this on board for free. And while you wouldn't get the effect that it says on Link Summon, you can add an Ancient Warriors card, which wouldn't matter anyway. Again, we're not playing Ancient Warrior cards. But while you do not get that, it doesn't really matter because you're still getting a free disruption off of that. And it's just a great way to like blend in the tri-typing of Beast, Beast Warrior, and Wing Beast together instead of having them like as this weird separate pile sort of mechanic. Like I know they tried doing that with like Sea Serpent, Fish, and Aqua, like with Mermails and stuff, but I think honestly, if we got like a Tri-Brigade for that, I think I would honestly just like jump over the moon. But it does do a really nice job of blending all of the tri-types together in a really cohesive fashion. But not only do they all do this, they also have their own individual effects as well. Fraktall saying that you can send it from your hand or field to the graveyard to send any level 3 or lower Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast from your deck to the graveyard, so you can basically send any of the Tri-Brigades except for another copy of himself. Nerval says that if it's sent to the graveyard by any means from anywhere, you can add a Tri-Brigade monster from your deck to your hand. Kit says if she's sent to the graveyards from anywhere by any means, you can send any Tri-Brigade card from your deck to the graveyard. And then Tri-Brigade Karis says you can discard one other Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast from your hand to special summon it directly from your hand. So all of these effects are fantastic in their own right. So Fraktall being able to send literally any Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast directly from your deck is amazing for all of your combos, being able to not only send any of your Tri-Brigades, but also any of your Lyrilusc as well, which is really good in combination with, say, Turquoise Warbler that can special summon from your graveyard. Nerval searching out any of these is awesome for getting extra Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast in your graveyard, which is really important, but it's also really good to grab another Tri-Brigade so you can use the effect to banish from graveyard to special summon from extra deck. Again, also really good for Karis specifically because Karis is basically the only extender that the Tri-Brigade portion has, so it's really good to blend in the Lyrilusc with the Tri-Brigades because the Lyrilusc are good extenders on their own, and it's really good in contrast with the Tri-Brigades that really only have the one extender in the form of Karis. Kit is amazing for a multitude of reasons. There's like some jank plays you can do with things like Tri-Brigade Oath for an extra negate out of your graveyard, but she's mainly just really good for getting an extra thing in your graveyard because before Kit was released, because she actually came in a different set, before Kit was released, Fraktall was literally just directly sending Nerval, meaning that you only got 2 Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast engraved. But now Fraktall gets to put 3 engraved because you dump Fraktall, then Kit, then Nerval, and then Nerval usually adds Karis, meaning that you can like discard something off of Karis and then get a 4th thing engraved, so you can summon a Link 4, being like the Tri-Brigade boss monster, for example. 3 Fraktall is mainly the way to go because it is one of the best combo starters that you have, not just by sending things like Kit and then Nerval. Sorry, I keep accidentally nudging them. This mat is like super weird in terms of its grip. You can not only send things like your Kit and then your Nerval, but you can also send things like your Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow while you have Turquoise Warbler or Beryl Canary in hand to special summon them from graveyard for free. Nerval is amazing because not only is he a consistency booster by adding any of your Tri-Brigades, but it's also amazing to play at 3 because it is a level 1 Wind Wing Beast, so it synergizes with all of your Lyrilusc cards and is the main thing that connects these 2 archetypes together and that gives them the synergy that they do have. Because you can open a hand of only Lyrilusc monsters and still access the Tri-Brigade portion of your deck because they can search your Nerval by multiple different means, which we'll get into later. Kit and Karis are both great cards. They're a lot better in higher ratios in the Sprite builds because the Sprite builds focus on level 2s, which they are, and technically most people tend to play only 1 and 1, which I actually used to only play as well. I did bump them up due to the desires, but now I'm keeping them bumped up due to the Ishizu cards because if your opponent is milling out your deck, you don't want to lose your names like your Karis specifically, but also having Kit left in deck is also really nice, and just putting the extra amount of Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast in the graveyard is fantastic while still having your resources left in the deck. Not to mention, opening either of these is not that bad. In fact, half the time it's actually really helpful because being able to normal summon Kit and go into like Almirage and then trigger her effect to send Nerval is really good, but it's also really good to open Karis because it can help you play through disruptions due to being like one of the only actual extenders. You can, however, play these 2 in any ratio that you'd like. I've actually seen some people on 3 Kit. If you're playing the Sprite build, you absolutely want to be on 3 Kit, but you can play anywhere from like 1 and 1, like 2 and 1, 1 and 2, 2 and 2. You can play like basically any ratio as long as it's not 0 or probably 3. So this little guy is a little bit on his own because it's the only hand trap we play in the deck, and that is 3 copies of DD Crow. So DD Crow is an absolutely amazing card, not just right now due to a Shizu tier being such a prominent deck, deck, but also just in general, because in this deck, you have a bunch of different ways to utilize him. So not only is it a wing beast, meaning that if you discard it on like your opponent's turn 0, you can then go and then have it as an additional wing beast in your graveyard to banish off of your Tri-Brigade effect, so that means you can access even more powerful link monsters than you could before. But also being a level 1 wing beast not only means that you can like normal summon it or special summon it off of Sapphire to go into Xyz plays, but you can also search it directly from your deck. So Cobalt Sparrow can search it immediately for you, and then you also have 2 different ways which I will mention to search it directly from the deck, which is absolutely fantastic, especially because not only can you just search it regularly, but you can also search it on top of your combo if you already opened extra combo pieces. So like one of your main combos opening like Turquoise and Cobalt, say you also open like another Lyrilusc monster that you were going to search anyway, well, instead of searching that Lyrilusc monster, now you get to search this DD Crow for free. There have been situations where I've searched 1, 2, even 3 DD Crows on top of my end board, meaning it was not only stronger due to having more disruptions, but also was more resilient to things like Dark Ruler because I had extra things in my hand to go off of. It is by far the best and basically most mandatory hand trap to play in Bird Up specifically, even just Tri-Brigade in general, but it's just so good that I would highly recommend at least 2, no less than that, but I prefer 3, especially due to tier being so dominant. So next up is a card that should have honestly been with the Lyrilusc Monsters, but like I kind of just forgot. We have 3 copies of Lyrilusc Bird Call. So this is our target that we search off of Celestine Wagtail, and it is an absolutely amazing card. It says take a Lyrilusc monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard, and then you can special summon a Lyrilusc monster with a different name directly from your hand, and you can only activate 1 Lyrilusc Bird Call per turn. So let's ignore the fact that it can also Foolish. It's kind of just like almost never gonna come up. I think it came up once for me with Celestine and maybe another time for Beryl Canary because I didn't have my Almirage anymore, but it is a free like Rhoda that you can also search itself, so you basically get like a double search there. But being able to special summon another one from your hand is the real kicker for this card, because you're essentially getting like 2 for 1 value here, because say you open, say, a Bird Call and Cobalt Sparrow. Well, what you can do is you can like Bird Call, add a Sapphire Swallow, if I can go ahead and grab it, there we go. You can Bird Call, add a Sapphire Swallow, sorry that I just absolutely smacked the camera there. You can Bird Call, add the Sapphire, and you can special summon the Cobalt off of the Bird Call. This will then trigger the Cobalt, which can then search another level 1 wing beast, like a Celestine or something like that, and then you can special summon your Sapphire and that level 1 wing beast because you now control a level 1 wing beast. It's basically one of the easiest ways to get your Lyrilusc monsters that need to be special summoned out of your hand in case you don't open anything else. Not to mention it being searchable is amazing because you can just go ahead and use it like halfway through your combo to get even more extension than you already had. While it isn't a card that you have to open, and it's not always a card that you have to like be able to search or be able to use midway through your combo, it is an additional extender due to the special summon effect, and also is really great to open with instead of one of your names, because one of the main combos you have is like Turquoise and Cobalt. Well, you can open Bird Call instead of either one of those and still go off completely, because this kind of just substitutes for an additional name. This is also the only Lyrilusc spell or trap that we actually play that we can search off of Celestine, because the other ones are just really underwhelming or really bad. We have like Lyrilusc Bird Sanctuary, which is good in like pure Lyrilusc, even though it is kind of bricky. And we also have it used in like the FTK builds because it attaches one of your Xyz to another one, which basically means you can like Reprodocus a Tolmaeus or an Angel of Mischief into a winged beast, and then just basically get it to like a million bajillion materials, which is really funny for that situation, but it's a bit too niche to play in here because we aren't focused on the Xyz monsters too much. We also have Lyrilusc Bird Strike, which is an archetypal Dark Ruler no more. It says if you control a Lyrilusc monster, you can negate the effects of all your opponent's face-up monsters, and that's honestly pretty good overall. However, it has a few different caveats. Not only do you have to control a Lyrilusc, which sounds like it's not that hard, but if you're getting like the thing on board, then your opponent like doesn't tell that you have the Bird Strike. I mean, like, I don't know. It's just hard to like have the thing in hand already and then get something on board and then go for the Bird Strike and then continue from there. One of the biggest things is that it can be responded to, so like your opponent can just easily negate it, and like, yeah, it's a negate bait, but so is literally anything else that you could have drawn. Also, if you've gotten to the point where you can get the Celestine on board and then search the Bird Strike and then use the Bird Strike, either your opponent had a board that wasn't strong enough anyway for the Bird Strike to matter because they couldn't stop you, or they just didn't want to win the game enough, I guess. Also, it is a hard once per turn, I'm pretty sure, so it's not as good as Dark Ruler, therefore I will not play it. And then finally we have Lyrilusc Phantom Feathers, which is the trap card, and it's so bad I'm not even going to talk about it. I just like to pretend it doesn't exist. So next, the only other 3 of spell we have is 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. I know, they're all mismatched rarities. I got a premium gold, a super, and a secret. I want to get a playset of secret, but like I just can't find any for a decent price. But seeing Tenki at 3 again really warms my heart, you know, pun intended with the fire. But being able to, on activation, add any level 4 or lower Beast Warrior is amazing, because I mean, yeah, the only one that you do play is Fraktall, but Fraktall is just so damn important that having the extra like 3 copies of him, basically putting him at 6 copies per deck, is absolutely fantastic. Also, all of your Beast Warriors gaining 100 attack actually does come up half the time, because having Fraktall at 2k has saved my asset points and helped me go for exactly game. And then also our Ancient Warrior Oath Double Dragon Lord is the only other Beast Warrior that we play. Going up to like 1700 is also pretty nice. It being a continuous spell is a little annoying at times because, you know, yeah, it is really good when you have like a Double Dragon Lords and like you send this for cost for it, because it does send for cost to like bounce something. I'll get into that later. So it's basically a resource that you don't have to send from like your hand or field, that like this one is expendable. But it also really sucks if like your entire board except for this gets broken and then you draw like Evenly or Lightning Storm or something, which, trust me, that does happen more often than you may think. It is pretty damn annoying, but you know, you kind of just take what you can get. Another thing that's really annoying about it is that because it is a hard once per turn, opening multiples of these is absolute agony. Not to mention, I've had situations where I've opened multiple Tenki and like multiple Fraktall, and considering all of them are hard once per turn, that really sucks. And I've even had a hand in the last couple months where it was like 3 Fraktall, 2 Tenki. It was that bad, and I think I top decked like the 3rd Tenki. It was so strange. It might not have been the 3rd Tenki, but like still 3 Fraktall double Tenki is super strange to see, because it wasn't even like a stacked situation. I didn't like pile shuffle or like organize them or anything. It was just completely randomized, and that was kind of annoying. I mean, it was still fun combo anyway, but like it still sucked. But like it really sucks, especially because if you open like 3 Fraktall, 2 Tenki, not only are they all hard ones per turns, but both of those Tenkis are completely dead because you don't play another target to search. But I'm still not going to complain about 6 copies of Fraktall in the main deck. This card is too good to not run at 3, even if I do very occasionally side out copies because it can be bricky. Finally, we have some one-of spells, being Foolish Burial, 1-for-1, and Called by the Grave. All of these are our power one-ofs. Foolish Burial being essentially a 7th copy of Fraktall is really great, especially because you can use it on top of a Fraktall to either get more things engraved or to play through like an Ash Blossom. Called by the Grave is Called by the Grave. There's not really much to explain there. And then 1-for-1 is quite possibly one of, you know, pun intended there as well, the most broken cards in the entire deck, as it has helped me make not only extra massive end boards, but also play through like a bunch of different disruptions and go for either full combo or the OTK anyway. It's essentially always live and is always going to be there as a starter or an extender for you, and is probably my favorite card, like literally in the entire deck. Konami, you should totally give me an extra copy of 1-for-1. I swear I'm normal and I can be trusted with it. So as I did mention, I am not playing any more hand traps other than the DD Crows, but instead I've opted to play board breakers this format. Sorry if the audio just got a little bit extra loud there, but I am playing 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent, 2 copies of Lightning Storm, and 3 copies of Evenly Matched. So we can probably already like tell that other than the Bestial monsters, which I don't really like in the deck because they do conflict with the Turquoise Warbler, other than the Bestials, hand traps are kind of just not that amazing right now, except for like maybe Imperm, which honestly I should probably put Imperm in here. But board breakers are actually really strong, and I think that these 3 are probably the best ones that you can currently play right now. Triple Tactics fits right at home in this deck as a deck that really loves getting the extra resources off of it, not to mention that stealing an opponent's monster can help you go for an OTK, or just get rid of a problematic threat on the field. And it's also actually really good to rip a card out of your opponent's hand because you also get the hand knowledge, and that can be really helpful against something like maybe Tyr, in case you want to hit like a Hovness out of their hand in case they use like something else, I don't know. Or just like any board breaker games 2 and 3. Lightning Storm is great against back row decks, which can be the bane of your existence. Things like There Can Be Only One and stuff like that are incredibly obnoxious to play against, skill drain, things like that. But it's of course also really good to out really problematic monster boards, especially of Link monsters, because they can't help being in attack position. And then Evenly Matched, my beloved, is quite possibly one of my favorite cards in the entire game. This is like arguably the strongest equalizer literally ever, and it's so funny that it's only like a few months ago seeing play again after seeing like no play for the longest time. Being able to force your opponent to banish all of their things face down until they only have one is just so absurdly strong in a format where people are putting out like a bunch of things on their end board and like to have various varied disruptions, and especially in a format in which your opponent is probably going to have a lot of things that want to hit the graveyard so they can float. Well, if you evenly them, none of their things are going to float because none of them are going to the graveyard, and even if they were to float when they were banished, they're getting banished face down, therefore they do not trigger anyway. Not to mention that it also can out things like towers should your opponent want to get rid of it, or anything else that you probably have a hard time outing if your opponent decides to get rid of it, because it's your opponent doing the action and not you. It's definitely a universally good card against basically every good deck right now. It kind of just murders Flu, especially if you also open like Lightning Storm or something and force out their trap card. Even though your Flu matchup is already absolutely absurd to begin with, like you just completely stomp Flu most of the time. It's really good against Sprite, especially if you can bait out the Toad, or it's also just good for baiting out Toad in general. And then, of course, while it isn't the most effective against Tier because, you know, they just have, like, these Shizu cards engraved, they got Bystials in hand, they got, like, literally everything else. They probably got a Hobness in hand, they're probably gonna, like, Nene on you anyway. But it is pretty good against Tier overall because, again, their stuff isn't going to be floating because they won't be hitting the graveyard. So it's much better to open than, like, Lightning Storm, even if they probably have a Crime to negate it. But, like, getting rid of all of their things and so they only have, like, one, like the Roll Kalos or something is pretty helpful, especially because things like Solyak also float. But that is going to do it for the main deck. I believe I'm on 41 cards. And again, a lot of my ratios are probably a bit bigger than they need to be. I think my birds are fine, but definitely the extra kit and Karis are something that can't afford to be cutted. So you can probably like drop one copy of each of those and then play like a third copy of like, I don't know, Triple T or Lightning Storm or something like that. Or maybe you can even like cut down a copy of, sorry, not evenly or something. You can probably cut down like a copy of something else as well and then play like Imperms or something like that. But yeah, with the main deck out of the way, let's go ahead and get onto the extra deck. Alright, so onto the extra deck, starting off with our Xyz monsters. We play 2 copies of Lyrilusc Recital Starling, 1 copy of Lyrilusc Ensemblue Robin, let's try not to drop it, and 1 copy of Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale. So all of these cards are incredibly important and or crucial to the bird up strategy, particularly Recital Starling and Assembled Nightingale, with Ensemblue sort of being off to the side as an optional one you can play. So starting off with Recital Starling, this is one of the most important cards that the deck has access to, so much so that until very recently, and by that I mean literally the last ban list like a month ago, Konami actually had this card at 1, which made the deck still playable, but significantly less strong for a few different reasons. So, Recital Starling says it requires 2 or more level 1 monsters, all of them say they require 2 or more level 1s, and if she is Xyz summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field, it gains 300 attack and defense for each material attached to her, and then once per turn, you can detach a material from her to add a level 1 wing beast from your deck to your hand, and all battle damage you take from battles involving this Xyz summon card is also inflicted to your opponent. So this is an absolutely phenomenal card for a variety of reasons. So the first effect on Xyz summon probably comes up the least out of all of them, however it is amazing in combination with the third involving the battle damage, but it's also really good for juicing up something like your Assembled, which we will get into, or any of your other big beaters, say like your Access Code Talker, or just anything else that you feel like needs to get larger in order to deal with the opponent's threats. The battle damage effect is incredibly important, especially for an OTK situation where I will mention in a minute, but being able to also inflict all of the damage to your opponent, especially when Recital Starling herself only starts with 0 attack, is absolutely phenomenal. It can lead to so many different jank OTKs, or at the very least you can draw some games with your opponent if you're that petty. But most importantly, the detaching a material to add any level 1 wing beast is the most important part of this card. So keep in mind, not only is this doing the same thing as Cobalt Sparrow in that it just adds any level 1 wing beast, but it's also a soft once per turn. Meaning that having the extra copy means you can go into it on top of the first one, well not on top literally, but like you can have that one as well as the first one and get 2 different searches, which is also really good for having both of these out for a card that we will explain here in a moment. She's like one of the biggest things you will ever go into in this deck. You'll probably go into her more than you go into like almost anything else, because she's just that damn important when it comes to your consistency, as well as some follow-up plays in case you don't get to the second one. Next is the Lyrilusc Ensemblue Robin. So again, this one is a little bit more optional. You don't have to play this one depending on what like kind of build that you want to go for, as well as just wanting to have more room in your extra deck. But Ensemblue Robin is a pretty great card against certain decks this format. She gains 500 attack for each material attached to her, and if your opponent special summons a monster or monsters except during the damage step, you can detach a material from her and target one of those monsters and return it to the hand. And if she is sent to the graveyard by your opponent's card at all, then you get to target another Lyrilusc in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So this card is also pretty damn fantastic. So getting the 500 attack for each material doesn't really like do her too much justice, unfortunately. She never really gets higher than like 2200, like maybe 27 on a good day, but that means you're kind of like sacrificing other things to go for her. But the real kicker is definitely the fact that she is not a once per turn either, and is rather just a once per special summon. So like if your opponent pendulum summons, you can only bounce like one, obviously, but she's not a once per turn at all, just kind of like a once per chain, I guess. But it's really good because you usually have anywhere from 2 to 4 materials on her, so it's fantastic against decks such as Sprite, which really need that board presence to stay on the board in order to access their extra deck plays. For example, if they normal summon a Nimble Beaver and special another Beaver, you can go ahead and bounce the one that they special. Then if they special summon another Sprite monster, you can bounce that Sprite monster, and so on and so forth, which, yes, it does give them the resources back in their hand so they can use it on a follow-up turn, but the point is that you're trying to prevent them from playing to the point where you can go ahead and OTK them next turn so you don't have to worry about that follow-up. It's also good against like most rogue matchups in general, and even though her body is usually not that big, it's similar to Appaloosa in that she gets smaller the more she uses her effect. It will bait out the opponent's battle phase, and you also have different ways to protect her, especially depending on your build, so you usually don't have to worry about it, and she can single-handedly get you anywhere from 2 to 4 disruptions, like, period. Her recovery effect is actually really phenomenal, though, because not only does it trigger if she's destroyed by battle or card effect, or sent to the graveyard by card effect, because it says sent to the grave by your opponent's card, it actually works if your opponent kaijus or sphere modes or lava golems you, so you can at least still get that follow-up for the next turn if your opponent can't kill you, which is actually pretty common in this format. OTKs aren't actually super frequent right now, so it is a really nice recursion, especially if your opponent ends up breaking your board, because it can give you a follow-up Turquoise Warbler or Beryl Canary, which can just completely give you back your plays or help you go for an OTK or Zeus next turn. Also, because it says Possession, technically if your opponent sends it from like your extra deck to the grave off of something like, I don't know, the Dogmatica cards, you can still technically trigger it, so that's pretty funny. But onto the real beast of the extra deck, we have a Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale. So this is an absolute monster, like, I mean, technically, literally. But she, of course, requires 2 or more level 1s, and she gains 200 attack for each Xyz material, so she's actually usually smaller than Ensemblue, but she makes up for it because she can attack directly, and also, while she has material, she can attack a number of times up to the number of material she has. So anywhere from 2 to like 4 or even like 6 or 7 times, that adds up and ends up being much more prominent than Ensemblue, especially because you don't have to worry about attacking over anything. She also has a quick effect saying that you can detach a material from her, and for that turn, your Lyrilusc monsters cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Also, you take no battle damage. So Assembled makes this one of the easiest decks ever to access Divine Arsenal Zeus, because you can just attack directly off of 2 monsters, and then slap it on top of that. And because it has the multiple attacks, you can actually deal a good amount of damage, to the point where you can actually OTK with Assembled Nightingale with, I believe, so if you have 6 materials, including a Beryl Canary, I think 5 materials, including 2 Beryl Canaries, or 7 materials outright, you can actually just push for an OTK with only the Assembled, which doesn't seem like it comes up very often. That seems like a lot of commitment, right? Well, you can actually do that by just opening, I think, like 3 Lyrilusc monsters, going second, and that's just absolutely absurd. So not only is she just really great for accessing Zeus, she can easily OTK the opponent. Plus, she's also really good at stalling for time in that sense, especially with her other effect. But her other effect is also really neat, because think about it again. You take no battle damage, and your Lyrilusc can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. This pairs perfectly with Lyrilusc Recital Starling, who says that your opponent also takes all the battle damage. And you would think that, you know, if you don't take damage, neither will your opponent, but that's simply not the case. And it's actually true, and trust me on this one, it is true that you can use the effect of Assembled, like you can go into battle with 2 of these and 1 of these, poke directly with the Assembled, detach during the battle phase, swing with the Recitals, and while you don't take any damage, depending on, like, I mean, if you attack like a 3k something, right? You don't take any of that 3k, but your opponent does. Meaning that these, in combination with one another, can create some of the nastiest OTKs of any deck ever. And trust me, it does work. It was actually ruled, I think, not that way for one event before people actually, or judges actually agreed that it is how that works. But it just makes the deck even better at OTKing than it would otherwise, even with just access code. So that is not all for our Xyz monsters. I am also playing the Utopic Future and Utopic Draco Future package in my extra deck. So Draco Future is a bit of an interesting case in here, because it is a card that after the Forbidden and Limited list that put Recital to 1, I was one of the players that dropped it. I wasn't trying to do that like coping thing where like you played an extra Assembled or like a Sylvan Princess Sprite just to make this on top of your end board, which was like, it ended up being really bad because you wasted so many resources going for it. I was not one of those players. I ended up just dropping it entirely, and even when Recital came back to 2, I didn't want to commit the 2 extra deck slots just for 1 negate, because I figured, you know, there was better options, and depending on the player that you are or what combos you want to go for at the end of this video, then it is a better option to go for something else. But I've since come back around to the card a little bit because I think it can offer a good amount to the table. So basically, for those of you that don't know, Utopic Draco Future is a rank 0, technically rank 1 Xyz monster that requires 3 Xyz monsters, with the same rank except numbers, but it can also use Utopic Future as material instead, and this only requires 2, so basically, when you use up your 2 Recital Starlings per turn, or not per turn, but like every turn that you start, you're going to use those Recitals, you're going to take this Utopic Future, put it on top of the Recitals, and then you're going to put this on top of that. So you do lose all of the materials that were under the Recitals. Those do go to grave, which is actually good for you because it puts more in your grave for your Tri-Brigades. But you do get to keep the Recitals as material, giving a total of 3 materials to your Utopic Draco Future. And Utopic Draco Future itself cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. It is a 3,000 by 2,000 body, meaning it is very big, even if it could be destroyed by battle. And also, once per turn, it is a soft once per turn technically, but it's not like it matters too much. When your opponent activates a monster effect, you can detach a material from this to negate the activation, and then if that monster was on the field, you actually have to take control of it. It is a mandatory, but it is a permanent steal. You get to keep the monster forever. In fact, you can take it in your pocket and go home with it. No, I'm kidding. But Draco Future is really nice in certain matchups, especially against a deck in which they have a really big monster on board that they want to keep, or they have a monster on board that they have to keep, period, that they really need to have there for certain plays. For example, I was playing against a Sprite player at my really competitive locals, and I believe he activated Starter and summoned Jet because, you know, he had a blue in hand, and he was going to use Jet to search like a Smashers or something to out my Draco Future. Well, I negated the effect of the Jet with the Draco Future, and I stole it. So not only did he not get the out to my Draco Future, but he also didn't have a level 2 left on board, because now he couldn't special summon that blue or anything from his hand, and he didn't really have any plays he could go for to my memory. So it basically ended up completely screwing him over, and because I kept that monster permanently and he didn't get back during the end phase or anything like that, he lost that extra resource there for something like a Smashers, or like not a Smashers, but like anything else that would require a level 2 on board for him, and it just completely ruined his day. I'm sorry if I'm not explaining as much about it as I would like. I actually just did a recording where I explained like a whole 10-minute thing with him and like everything that he did and all of his applications and everything, but it turns out the record button wasn't pressed because I'm recording this in multiple takes because I have a DSLR camera that only records up to 12 minutes at a time. And so, yeah, my voice is like really tired and I don't want to waste like too much time talking about Draco Future again. So I am sorry, but if you look at the card yourself, it is a pretty self-explanatory card. And so yeah, while I did cut it at some point, I have come back around to putting it in there, though I do wish it didn't take up 2 extra deck slots. And for the final Xyz in the extra deck, you know him, you love him, we have Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder, my beautiful ulti that I have to bring up literally every time that I make a bird up deck profile or any deck profile with Zeus in it because I love how pretty it looks. But this card is just wild in this deck, like being able to just slap down 2 level 1s, go into an Assembled Nightingale, poke for some good amount of damage there, and then just wipe the entire board while also being able to play going on your main phase 2. so good. It makes the deck actually able to go second better than a lot of other decks, and is one of the main things that made me enjoy the deck because I loved having the ability to go first or second very easily. There isn't much to explain here. Zeus is pretty generic enough. I mean, I don't think I have to explain it very much, but I just love this card. I was playing the Downward Magician, but I had to cut it to make room for other things because the Downward Magician just isn't that amazing. I mean, getting that extra Zeus send is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but in this format in particular, where Tier really like laughs at your Zeus and even benefits off it at points, it's really not that amazing to play the Downward for the matchups that aren't Shizu Tier. And more often than not, just the 1 or 2 wipes is more than enough. You don't really need that 3rd or 4th one that badly, especially when it gives your opponent a chance to Nibiru you. On to the Link monsters now in the extra deck. We play 1 copy of Salamangreat Almirage. I've had people tell me that this card isn't worth playing, but like I just completely disagree. I mean, opening Kit or Nerval and then like any beast or Beast Warrior or Wing Beast in hand can like make Almirage help you that bad hand and turn it into something actually good. Like I don't think there's much to talk about when it comes to Almirage, but like the too long didn't read is that like without Almirage, your bad hands go from like mediocre to like completely unplayable. We also have 1 copy of Tri-Brigade Farragut the Baron Blossom and 1 copy of Tri-Brigade Bearbrum the Rampant Rampager as our link to Tri-Brigade monsters, so these I will finally get back into the actual explanations. So Tri-Brigade Farragut is a really cool card overall, one of the most important cards in the entire deck. It is a link 2 that requires only 2 Beast Warrior and or Wing Beast monsters, so she's basically completely generic in your deck. You can use any monster in your main deck or extra deck, almost your extra deck, to go into her. She allows you during your main phase to special summon any Beast Warrior, or sorry, any level 4 or lower Beast Warrior or Wing Beast from your hand to your field. It doesn't have to be to her arrow though, don't worry about that. It's not gonna like completely shut you down. Also, I forgot to mention, so the Tri-Brigade effects from the main deck as well as this effect to special from hand, they actually do have a pseudo restriction. I should have totally mentioned this, but you cannot use monsters as material for Link summons for the rest of the turn after using these effects, except Beast Warrior and Wing Beast. It's not like the biggest lock in the world, so I didn't feel like explaining it at the time because I just completely forgot about it, kinda. Because it doesn't really come up that much, but it can come up at times. Like, you can't use like your Appaloosa for an access code when you've already used a Tri-Brigade effect. So I'm sorry I forgot to mention that, but it is a little bit important so you don't end up like cheating a little bit. But also, if she's sent to the graveyard, by the way, she lets you draw 1 card and put 1 card from your hand onto the bottom of your deck. So it may seem like a bit of a neg there. I mean, like, it's just a 1-for-1 thing, but it's really good when you're going first because you can put back one of those board breakers or some like useless card in your hand like a brick. It can also help you going second when you're trying to dig for board breakers or try to dig for like anything that you really desperately need. It was also really good back in the prime of Bird Up because you could put back the Mist Valley Apex Avian from your hand so you can summon it from deck and then have something else, because that card sucked to draw. I drew it so often. But yeah, Farragut is basically one of the best things in your extra deck, but you don't need to play more than 1, and it's not like you even have the room to, even if you wanted to. But next we have Tri-Brigade Bearbrum, the Rampant Rampager. So she's a bit more particular. She requires 2 Tri-Brigade monsters, so you're really only going to be using Tri-Brigades to summon her. I mean, you can banish 2 to summon her from the extra deck in that way, but it usually doesn't like come up the most often. But she has some pretty good effects as well. She says you can discard any 2 cards to target one of your banished level 4 or lower Beast Warrior or Wing Beast, special summon it back to your side of the field. And also, if she is sent to the graveyard from anywhere, you can add any Tri-Brigade spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and then you have to put a card from your hand on the bottom, similar to Farragut, but you are also locked out of non-Tri-Brigade monsters for the turn. So that is really unfortunate because it affects everything. Like, it affects special summon from the extra deck and from anywhere else. So if it said Beast or Wing Beast, honestly, the card would be like super good with Bird Up, but it is kind of annoying that it does lock you out of anything except for Tri-Brigades. It's the main reason why I am no longer playing the card that facilitates the second effect, being the Tri-Brigade Revolt. Don't worry though, for you Revolt lovers, that I used to play Revolt, and so I do know a bunch of combos involving the Revolt, and so I will be explaining some of those. The main reason that I am playing the Bearbrum is for the first effect to discard 2 and special back a banished one, because it gives you access to so many more combos, and also similarly to what was it called? The Almirage, it helps turn your bad hands into actually playable ones, especially because you can discard like any 2 cards, and so you can discard like a board breaker or 2 going first, meaning that you don't really have to worry too much about the cost. So yeah, Bearbrum is really nice for facilitating combos, even if I'm no longer playing the Revolt for her second effect, because it conflicts too much with the playstyle that I'm playing with this current build. So next we have a more miscellaneous card, that being the Ancient Warrior's Oath Double Dragon Lords. This is the only other Link 2 in the deck, and I did mention it earlier, though now it is time to give it a proper explanation. So it is a Link 2 Beast Warrior with 1100 attack that lets you summon it using Beast Warriors, including a Ancient Warriors. However, that doesn't come up in this build because we don't play any Ancient Warriors. Those cards kind of suck. Sorry, Ancient Warrior players. But you can summon it out using the Tri-Brigade effect out of the main deck. And while it does have 1100 attack, it does say all of your Ancient Warrior monsters gain 500 attack, so it will go up to 1600, 1700 if you have Fire Formation Tenki live. And it does have an effect on Link Summon, but again, it will never come up. But it has another really good effect saying that, as a quick effect, you can send one card from your hand or field to the graveyard and target one face-up card your opponent controls for cost, and then return that target to the hand. So this is a really good card, not just for being a Link 2 and going into things like Appaloosa or Access Code if you really need to, but also just for an additional disruption on top of your end board. You don't always get it, at least not in this particular build, but it is a really common thing to have, and it is a really nice thing to have, because being able to bounce your opponent's face-up cards is good, not just to stop things like, you know, Perlino or any other continuous back row, but it's also good to protect like your Ensemblue or your Appaloosa from being beat over, or in a different situation, another card that I will mention in the alternative section and some of the combos. But it's just a nice card overall, even if it is like a 1-for-1 trade, and the opponent does technically get the card back, so it is kind of cringe that you have to send and they get a bounce. But it is pretty good for triggering things like Kit or Nerval on the opponent's turn, which is really good for situations in this build, because not playing the Revolt does cut off some of the follow-up plays that you do have, so it kind of makes up for it there. For the Link 3 of the deck, we are playing one copy of Hrisvelgr, the Desperate Doom Eagle. So this is a bit of an interesting card. You could also play Rugal the Silver Sheller, but like, I'm not going to mention that in the alternatives because I think it's kind of a bad card, and also I can't find mine. But Hrisvelgr the Desperate Doom Eagle is a pretty great card. So it is a Link 3 Wing Beast that you can actually hard summon in this deck because it does only require 2 or more wind monsters, so the Lyrilusc Monsters as well as Nerval and Double Dragon Lords actually make this fair game, though you will more often than not be summoning it using a Tri-Brigade effect. It's really good against decks like Fluanderies because it says it gains 2400 attack while your opponent has no monsters in their graveyard. So Flu is typically only going to have like maybe Shifter or something, and it's really good for its other effect too because it has a quick effect saying that you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, and that is a hard once per turn. So this card is not only good against like stuff like Flu, again, because you can shuffle back like that Shifter, and then just go for game because it has 4800 attack, but it's also really good as an endboard piece against a Shizu tier, because you can spin the Shizu or the tier cards out of the way during your opponent's turn, meaning that their tier stuff will not resolve, or you can bait out things like the Shizu cards early so that you don't have to worry about them later. However, more often than not, it is just going to be a Link 3 to climb into Access Code with because it is super easy to summon, and it does a lot more than Rugal, so that's the main reason why we play it. For our last Tri-Brigade monster, we play one copy of Tri-Brigade Shurick, the Ominous Omen. So before anyone starts chewing me out in the comments, I would play more if I had the room. I just do not have the room. I hate playing the one Shurick, but I mean, I just kind of have to at this point. But Shurick is such a fantastic card and makes for an amazing boss monster. So what he does is he is a Link 4 with 3000 attack, so he's a really beefy body, and he requires 2 or more Beast Warrior or Wing Beast monsters, so you can use 2 Link 2s to summon him if you want to, or a Link 3 and like any monster. And he's really interesting because he says if he is special summoned, or if another Beast Warrior or Wing Beast monster is special summoned to your side of the field while he's on the field, you can non-target banish any card on the field. Also, if he is sent to the graveyard from anywhere by any means, you can add any Beast Warrior or Wing Beast monster from your deck to your hand with a level less than or equal to the number of your banished Beast Warrior or Wing Beast monsters. So this card is so good. So not only being able to non-target banish anything on the field as some of the best removal in the game, especially on a boss monster, but also being able to do it not just on summon, but when you summon something else is super good. Because not only, like, say you're playing the Revolt, you activate the Revolt, you summon the Shurick on your opponent's turn, and you get a banish on that summon. Then come your turn, you use the Fraktall that you searched after using your Revolt and putting the Nerval engraved, you normal summon that, you banish 3, and you go for Hrisvelgr. You can then trigger the Shurick again for another non-targeting banish before you even go into your access code to start popping even more things on the board. His second effect is also completely fantastic for this deck because it's so good for both comboing and as a floating in case your opponent outs it, because adding literally any Beast, Warrior, or Wing Beast from your deck as long as you have like any number of banished things, because let's be real, if you're going to add a Lyrilusc monster, you only need one banished Beast, Warrior, or Wing Beast. But if you're summoning the Shurig, you're more likely than not going to have 4 banished Beast, Warrior, or Wing Beast. You can search basically anything in your entire deck. So it's just so good for so many different situations, and will literally win you games single-handedly because of the follow-up that it gives you. I really like Shurig. I really wish I had room for the second one. I just don't currently, especially because I'm not playing the Revolt. I don't technically need to, even if using him for my combo, like, sometimes is really cringe when I'm only playing the one. I also do wish that I had secret rares, but I mean, whatever. They're kind of expensive, so. And then finally, for the last 2 Link 4s of the deck, we have 1 copy of Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess, and 1 copy of Access Code Talker. These are cards that I don't think I need to explain very much. Appaloosa is a great card on top of your end board. She's a really good card this format overall. I think she's pretty underrated, stopping all the Sprite monsters, stopping all the Flu monsters when they can't chain block, as well as stopping the tier monsters when they aren't chain blocked as well, or stopping like a Sharon and Ham without destroying them is really fantastic, especially because she gives you so much off of just 1 monster. And then Access Code makes pushing for game in this deck so easy, because just Fraktall on its own can access Access Code, you know, funny joke there, but it gives you a free pop just from Fraktall, as well as a 5300 attack Access Code. Like, how cool is that? Access Code is so good for Tri-Brigade decks in general, and I think these 2 Link 4s are things that you just kind of can't take out of the extra deck. I mean, I have played without Access Code before, but trust me when I say you don't want to play without him. So that is going to be it for the extra deck. I want to showcase to you guys some alternative cards you can also play in the deck. This will include things that are in my other builds that aren't in my current build, including things that we are going to be seeing in the other combos, sorry, that being the Fabled Cerberell, as well as Herald of the Arclight, making up a small package on their own. So the Fabled Cerberell, a lot of you probably haven't seen this card before, sorry. He's a level 2 Light Beast tuner that says when this card is discarded to the graveyard, mandatory special summon it. So it's really good for being a level 2 body as well as a tuner, because it helps you access Herald of the Arclight, which is a level 4 synchro that says any monster sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard is banished instead. Also, when a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated, you contribute this card to negate and destroy. So not only is it a super powerful floodgate against tier or any other deck that needs its graveyard, but it's also really good as an Omni because it helps stop things like Evenly, Lightning Storm, or any other strong back row or monster effects. I was playing these up until I believe my, actually I think this is the most recent build of me not playing this. I was saying that this was better to go for than the Ensemblue or the Draco Future, and depending on your situation, honestly it is, hence why I still side deck this, and hence why I will be showing you all of the combos that I can think of utilizing this package because I think it is really strong, and I'll show you exactly how to do it come later. Another card that I actually no longer play either in the main or the side, but I will be showcasing in a lot of the combos, is the Tri-Brigade Revolt. So for those of you that don't know, Revolt is a trap card that says special summon a number of your Beast, Warrior, or Wing Beasts that are banished and or in your graveyard, but negate their effects and immediately link summon a Tri-Brigade using all of those monsters, and you can only activate 1 Revolt per turn. Revolt is such a strong card, being able to not only put all of those banished resources back in your graveyard for further use, triggering things like Nerval or Kit or any other things that you special summon back and then put in the graveyard. So it also puts back your Lyrilusc, by the way, which is really good for like your follow-up Zeus plays, but it also summons a Shurig, which basically turns this into free follow-up by adding any Tri-Brigade from your deck off of the Nerval, while also giving you a non-targeting banish off of the Shurig. It's a great way to play around things like Dark Ruler. Sorry if I'm like touching the cards too much, by the way. I'm like really tired right now, so it's kind of giving me some stimulation. But like it's giving you follow-up, it's giving you a disruption, it's like helping you play through all of these board breakers like Dark Ruler or even evenly matched, and it's just really good at doing that. I just don't like it because the main way to search it is to get it off of the Berbrum, and I'm currently trying to focus more on the Ensemblue, and to do that I usually need the Beryl Canary, and Beryl Canary and Berbrum like to butt heads a lot because they both lock you into different things, and so they just lock each other out of each other, which is really annoying, but I mean, what more can you do? But again, this card is super strong, so I will be showcasing some combos later on in the video in which I will show you how to summon or how to use the Revolt properly. Of course, as I mentioned, I am not personally playing hand traps in this build, but if you feel like it, or once Kashtira comes out and makes hand traps a little bit more viable, play as many hand traps as you want. I mean, you can play Ash Blossom, you can play Ghost Bell, you can play Ghost Ogre, you can play Droll. All of these I have main decked at one point. Main deck Droll was really funny because it is a level 1 and a wind, so it does synergize with the deck a good amount. You can also play Effect Veiler, which I have not played, but it is also a level 1 that you can use. And honestly, if you want to play Small World, I'm pretty sure these Small World bridge really well. But yeah, you can play like all of these different hand traps. I have played all of them except for the Veiler at one point. They are really strong, just not currently in this particular format. Finally, a card that I did test a little bit is Alpha the Master of Beasts. This is a really funny card because it's similar to Pankratops, not Castor Ephemer, but Pankratops specifically, because it says if your opponent has the most attack on their field, they have more attack with their monsters than you do, you can special summon it from your hand, and then you can target your Beast Warrior or Wing Beast monsters you control, return them to the hand, and then non-target bounce, I believe, is it cards or monsters? Okay, so face-up monsters, you can non-target bounce face-up monsters your opponent controls equal to that number, and then also, the special summon condition is not a once per turn, so you can special summon it, bounce a bunch of things, or at least one thing by bouncing itself, and then you can special summon it again so long as your opponent has literally any monster, meaning that you get a free 3k body. However, just keep in mind it cannot attack directly the turn that you use the bounce effect. I did really enjoy the card when I played it, at least when the times that it came up, but most of the time it was either getting banished off of Desires or I just wasn't seeing it, so I did not have enough extensive play with it, but I do think it is a really funny card that you can put in the side deck, even though I was main decking it. Also, you like my fake Starlight sleeve? I think it's really funny. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for the main deck, extra deck, and alternatives. This is almost 2 hours of raw footage here. It's probably gonna be more like an hour 15, hour and a half for y'all. But this is a lot of footage here for just the deck profile section. Again, I do have over 10 plus combos that I will be showcasing you in just a second, so I hope you are all excited to see that. I will also have some pros and cons after that, as well as my final thoughts, and the reason I'm wrapping it up like this right now is because this is the last video I'm recording for the night. I will be recording everything else, or at least the combos tomorrow, because this is a long video. So I can't wait to see you guys in the combos. I hope you all did enjoy the deck profile so far, and without further ado, let's get to comboing. Alright everybody, welcome to the combo portion of this video. So I apologize if the angle is a little bit off or if the lighting is a little bit off. I was going to do a bunch of different other setups. I tried some other setups in like my kitchen on a folding table and everything, and it just didn't really work out because of certain issues. And so I'm back in my room and I'm using my tripod over my boom arm because I can't put my boom arm on the back of my desk, but regardless, I hope it's not that big of a deal. I'll try to fix everything that's bad in post. But I am very excited to show you guys all of my combos that I have put together. I have over 10 different combos that I wish to show you guys for the bird up strategy. This section of the video will be chopped down into 2 sections actually, that being the Ensemblue combos, which end on Ensemblue, and the Arclight combos that end on Arclight, as the main centerpiece of their boards respectively, even though they might have each other. I kind of forgot some of the combos myself, I have them written down. But with that being said, why don't we start with one of the most bread and butter combos of the bird up strategy, and that being Turquoise Warbler and Cobalt Sparrow. This is one of the most standard openers in the entire deck, and will lead to your most basic end board when it comes to the Ensemblue combos, and so I don't want to waste any more time. Let's go ahead and showcase combo number 1, being Turquoise Warbler and Cobalt Sparrow in the Ensemblue section. So of course you're going to start off by special summoning your Turquoise Warbler because you control no monsters, which will then allow you to activate her effect on summon to special summon a Lyrilusc monster from our hand or our graveyard, in this case being our hand and that being our Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow. This will trigger the effect of our Cobalt Sparrow, who can then add any level 1 wing beast from our deck to our hand because she was special summoned, in this case being our Tri-Brigade Nerval. It's usually best to start by adding Nerval before anything else, because Nerval is really good at helping you access your Tri-Brigade portion of your deck in case you get stopped at this point onward by any hand traps or other disruptions. Next, we're going to take our 2 level 1s and go into our first copy of Lyrilusc Recital Starling. We're going to activate her effect, detaching a material, typically the Turquoise because she is the most expendable because now she does nothing, and we are going to add our Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallow from our deck to our hand. Remember that this Recital Starling cannot be Veilered or Impermed or Ghost Mortared because she has the targeting protection on her, meaning that your opponent would have to say Ash in order to stop her. But now that we control a Wing Beast, we can activate the effect of Sapphire Swallow in our hand to special summon both herself and another level 1 Wing Beast from our hand, that being of course our Tri-Brigade Nerval. Unfortunately, we are not playing anything like the Scareclaw Lightheart, which I do acknowledge is something that I probably should have put in the alternative section, but I just kind of ended up spacing it. It is a really good card to play in case you feel like finding the room. But we have no way to access our Tri-Brigade portions normally with our Nerval, so we're just going to go ahead and go into another recital. I know I'm putting the materials in a different fashion, but who cares? We're going to activate the effect of this recital now. I like detaching the Sapphire Swallow personally first, because while you can detach your Nerval and then trigger the effect of Nerval, keep in mind that because it detaches for cost, you can end up detaching it and your opponent can chain something like DD Crow and a Shizu card or something similar to put it back in your deck or banish it or remove it from the graveyard by any means, which would then prevent you from activating it, which is something that's really bad. We don't want our opponent to have a chance to stop it without something like, I don't know, Called By. So we're just going to detach the Sapphire Swallow, which will then allow us to add another level 1 Wing Beast, this time being our Celestine Wagtail. We won't have to worry about not using the Nerval for long though, because we are now going to take both of our Recital Starlings and overlay them, make sure to send the materials to the graveyard, and we are going to summon our number F0 Utopic Future, which will then allow our Nerval to trigger, which can add any Tri-Brigade monster from our deck to our hand. I typically like to go for Tri-Brigade Kit. So this is the point in the combo in which our opponent is faced with an interesting situation, that being either having to Nibiru you now if they have Nibiru, and then allowing you to get everything else in your combo, or holding their Nibiru and then end up getting hit by the Utopic Draco Future. Draco Future is just a really good way of future-proofing the rest of your combo from anything like Nib or any other potentially monster-based hand traps, including sometimes Bystials depending on the combo you're going for, which will make sense later. But we are now going to continue on with our combo, starting off by normal summoning our Tri-Brigade Kit. We have not committed a normal summon yet. We will now activate the effect of our Tri-Brigade Kit, banishing the Nerval and the Turquoise Warbler from our grave because they are both the most expendable. I'll be putting them up here. I don't know if you can exactly see them. I'm sorry if you can't. But we will be summoning our Tri-Brigade Farragut, the Barren Blossom, to the extra monster zone. We can now activate the effect of our Farragut. Because she is on the field, we can special summon any level 4 or lower Beast Warrior or Wing Beast from our hand. We are then going to special our Celestine Wagtail, which will then trigger her effect to allow us to add any Lyrilusc spell or trap from our deck to our hand, of course being the Lyrilusc Bird Call. Now we're going to further add on to our end board on top of that Draco Future. We're going to use all 3 of these monsters in order to go into an Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess with 3 materials. Allow me to get out one of my dice so that you can see, ba-da-da-boom. So we have 3 materials on this Appaloosa. We are now sitting at 4 disruptions, but we're not even done there, because now we're going to activate our Lyrilusc Bird Call, which, keep in mind, is both a Rhoda and a Foolish, so this is going to allow us to add a Lyrilusc Beryl Canary from our deck to our hand. We can then activate the effect of the Beryl Canary in our hand, targeting the Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallow in our graveyard, special summoning both, and then locking us into Xyz from the extra deck until for the rest of the turn, sorry. That isn't even a problem though for this deck, because we're finally going to end off our combo by turning these 2 into a Lyrilusc Ensemblue Robin. We will now trigger the effect on summon. Because she used the Sapphire Swallow on field as material, we can target a Lyrilusc monster in our graveyard, this time being the Cobalt Sparrow, and then attach it directly from the graveyard to it as material. Keep in mind that the Cobalt Sparrow will not be giving it the targeting protection here, because it does have to be on field in order to give it the protection. However, we are still not even done, because we can now activate the effect of the Celestine Wagtail in our graveyard, targeting the Ensemblue Robin, to attach it directly from the graveyard, and then finally ending off our combo. So at the end of it all, what do we end up getting here? We get 3 negates on an Appaloosa, which are only monster negates, but they do negate the activation without destroying, so it is perfect against a deck like Tyr. We have a monster negate that also negates activation and does not destroy, sorry. And it also has destruction protection from battle and card effect. And then we have a 2200 attack Ensemblue Robin with 4 different special summon bounces that also gains that additional 200 due to the Beryl Canary, so it is at 22 and not just 2k. And also possession of it cannot switch, leaving us with a total of 8 disruptions and some protection on some of our monsters, the Ensemblue also being able to float. This seems like a lot on one end board off of just 2 cards because we do still have 3 cards left in our hand, but this isn't even close to the strongest end board that you can make in this deck. Speaking of the strongest combo though, let's go ahead and get right into the strongest combo for the Ensemblue section of the video. Alright, next up on the list of combos, at least for the Ensemblue section, I'm going to be showcasing the best opening hand combo that you can end up getting, which may seem a little bit odd to showcase now instead of at the very end, but I feel like it's better to just show you at least the two most basic and important combos before we get into some of the more complex ones. So in order to access this combo, it's literally almost the exact same principle, with opening the Lyrilusc Turquoise Warbler, as well as the Tri-Brigade Fraktall. So starting off, instead of going immediately for the Turquoise Warbler, we're going to of course have to activate the effect of our Tri-Brigade Fraktall in order to send from our deck to the graveyard a level 3 or lower Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast. Sorry if you just saw my mouse, by the way. But we're going to be sending our Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow. From here, it's actually very similar to the last combo, so I won't be going over in too much detail like before. We're going to special summon our Turquoise. Turquoise will then allow us to special summon the Cobalt from our grave. Cobalt will then add our Tri-Brigade Nerval from our deck. We're going to overlay these into a Recital Starling, using the effect of the Recital Starling, detaching the Turquoise to add a Sapphire Swallow, activating the Sapphire Swallow to special and special, keeping this zone free usually. And here's where it finally changes. We're going to immediately use the effect of Nerval, banishing the Fraktall and the Turquoise from our graveyard because we now have two targets, to summon a Tri-Brigade Farragut, the Barren Blossom. From here, we're going to go into our other Recital Starling, of course doing the same thing as last time, detaching the Sapphire Swallow to add our Celestine Wagtail, overlaying into our Utopic Future, triggering the effect of our Nerval Engrave. Sorry if I am going too fast, but again, it is a very similar principle to the last combo. But we are going to trigger the Nerval to add our Tri-Brigade Kit. Of course, don't forget to go into Draco Future. Sometimes when I'm doing combo test hands at home, I end up forgetting to go into the Draco Future. Now we're going to activate the effect of our Farragut, special summoning our Celestine Wagtail, triggering the Celestine to add our Lyrilusc Bird Call. And now here's where things again get a little bit different. We're going to normal summon our Tri-Brigade Kit, and we're going to use the effect of Kit, banishing the Nerval and the Sapphire because they are both the most expendable ones in the graveyard, adding up to our pile of banished Beast, Beast Warrior, and Wing Beast. And we are going to summon our Ancient Warrior's Oath Double Dragon Lords. In case you didn't know, Ancient Warrior's Oath Double Dragon Lords is a targeting bounce for the opponent's face-up cards by sending a card from your hand or field to the graveyard as cost. We are then going to take our Kit, Celestine, and Farragut and once more go into an Appaloosa with 3 negates. And then just like last time, we are going to use our Bird Call to add a Lyrilusc Beryl Canary, then activating the Beryl Canary, targeting this time the Cobalt Sparrow because the Sapphire is now banished. We are going to special summon both, and we are then going to overlay both. Let me get the Draco Future and its materials out of the way because I don't like putting this under one of my zones. But we are going to take both of these and go into our Ensemblue, and instead of having the extra attached from Grave from the Sapphire, all we have is the Celestine this time. So this is going to put 3 materials on the Ensemblue, and so you actually end up with the exact same amount of disruptions as the last combo, that being 8, however they are spread a little bit more evenly, so cards like Forbidden Droplet or Imperm are much more difficult for your opponent to use. We have the 3 monster negates from Appaloosa and the monster negate from Draco Future with its protection. We have the 3 special summon bounces with Ensemblue, who this time actually does have the targeting protection that she lacked before because the Cobalt Sparrow was on field as her material. And then we also have a targeting bounce with the Double Dragon Lords, which can send literally anything from your hand or face of field, typically like itself or a used up Ensemblue, or preferably even like a Kit or a Nerval in your hand or on your field in order to get some extra follow-up, and that is going to be able to targeting bounce an opponent's face-up card, and all of this is while you still have 3 other cards in hand. So of course, because the combo did open with Turquoise and Fraktall, it also works with Tenki replacing the Fraktall. It's actually even better because Double Dragon Lords can just send the Tenki for free, and both of these combos that I just showcased to you, I believe also work with Bird Call replacing the Turquoise Warbler. You just gotta work around a little bit in terms of going partway through the combo. That is it for the 2 main combos of the Ensemblue section. Let's go ahead and get into some alternative combos that also end on similar or the same end boards. So I believe earlier in the video during the deck profile section, I said that Celestine Wagtail and Cobalt Sparrow were essentially the same card in terms of combos, and that actually does hold up pretty true overall, because I'm going to show you how you can get the exact same end board as the first combo that I showcased to you, using Celestine Wagtail instead of the Cobalt Sparrow. So of course, what better way to start off than by special summoning our Turquoise Warbler from our hand, triggering her effect to special summon the Celestine Wagtail from our hand. This will then allow the Celestine Wagtail's effect to trigger, allowing us to add our Lyrilusc Bird Call from our deck to our hand. Next up, we are going to overlay both of these into our Lyrilusc Recital Starling, activating the effect of our Recital Starling, detaching the Turquoise to add a Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow. Now we can activate the effect of our Bird Call. It's going to add our Sapphire Swallow from our deck to our hand, but it also has that effect to special summon, meaning that we can special the Cobalt Sparrow over here, and then trigger her effect on summon after this resolves to add another level 1 Wing Beast from our deck to our hand, in this case being the Tri-Brigade Nerval. Of course, we have many Wing Beasts on our board now, so Sapphire Swallow is in fact live, meaning that we can special summon both her and our Tri-Brigade Nerval freely. This time we don't have enough things in our graveyard like we did for the Fraktall combo, so we are simply going to use the Cobalt Sparrow and the Nerval. I like using the Cobalt because maybe they still have like a targeting hand trap left and this will prevent from targeting, and we're going to go into our Recital number 2. Activating the effect of our Recital number 2, detaching the Cobalt, and instead of adding it off of Bird Call this time, we're just straight up searching the Beryl Canary off of our Recital Starling. Now, of course, we're going to overlay both of our Recital Starlings into our Utopic Future, triggering the effect of our Tri-Brigade Nerval to search the final thing for this combo, being the Tri-Brigade Kit. Don't forget, of course, to go into your Utopic Draco Future before normal summoning your Tri-Brigade Kit, and then activating the effect of Kit, banishing the Nerval and the Turquoise Warbler to summon our Tri-Brigade Farragut from our extra deck. We don't even need to use the effect to special summon this time because there's literally nothing in the deck that would really trigger, and so we're just going to straight up link all of these into our Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess with 3 materials. Of course, we could optionally trigger the Farragut like we could have for all of these combos, and then we're going to activate the effect of our Beryl Canary, targeting our Sapphire Swallow, special summoning both, and overlaying both into our Ensemblue Robin, attaching from grave due to both the Sapphire Swallow attaching the Cobalt, and the Celestine Wagtail attaching itself. And there you have it, the exact same 8 Disruption end board as shown in the very first combo, except this time you get to use the Celestine Wagtail, so that you know how to do it in case you have different options in your hand. So for anyone that's been a fan of my bird up videos for a good amount of time now, this is probably a familiar sight, that being Fraktall and any Beast Warrior or Wing Beast period. And then of course any cards in hand. This is a combo that I found out like a good while ago, at least in terms of the build that I was using for those videos, but what if I told you that I also discovered a combo that's even stronger than that combo and has strength to rival the end board that you make with your typical hand? Well, let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start by activating our Tri-Brigade Fraktall, who is then going to send our Tri-Brigade Kit. We will then trigger the effect of our Tri-Brigade Kit to send our Tri-Brigade Nerval, who is then going to trigger to add our Tri-Brigade Karis. Next up, we are going to put Karis' special summon effect to good use by discarding that random Beast Warrior or Wing Beast from our hand to special summon Tri-Brigade Karis from our hand. We are then going to activate the effect of Karis, pulling a very risky play here. If you get impermed here, you might as well just say your prayers. We're going to banish all 4 of these Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast monsters from our graveyard to summon our Tri-Brigade Shurig. This is where playing the second one is very helpful, because then you can still have one after this, but unfortunately I just don't have the room. But now, we are going to link the Shurig and the Karis into a Tri-Brigade Bearbrum the Rampant Rampager, and this is why I think Bearbrum is just such an important card to play, even if you're not playing the Revolt. Remember, Shurig actually has an effect when he touches the graveyard, being that if he's sent to the graveyard by any means, you can add a Beast Warrior or Wing Beast monster from your deck to your hand with a level less than or equal to your number of banished Beast Warrior or Wing Beast, and we currently have 4, meaning we can add any level 4 or lower that we want. And in this case, compared to our usual Fraktall and any Beast Warrior or Wing Beast combo from the old videos, we actually get to access our Lyrilusc package here by adding a Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow. So it may seem odd to have Cobalt Sparrow here when we have literally no way of getting her out of our hand, but it actually makes a lot of sense when we use the effect of our Tri-Brigade Bearbrum, discarding any 2 random cards from your hand. They could be board breakers, they could be hand traps, they could be any cards that you just don't really care about, targeting our banished Tri-Brigade Nerval, and special summoning it from the banished pile. We still have 2 Beast Warrior or Wing Beasts in our graveyard, being the Shurig and the Karis, meaning that we can now activate the effect of our Nerval to banish both of them and summon a Link 2, of course being who else but Tri-Brigade Farragut, the Barren Blossom. Now we can activate the effect of Farragut to get this Cobalt out of our hand and onto the field, triggering her effect to add any level 1 Wing Beast from our deck to our hand, being the Sapphire Swallow. And so before we do anything else, this may seem a little bit strange, but I promise you it's going to make so much sense in just a moment. But we are going to link our Farajay and our Bearbrum immediately into our Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess with only 2 materials. This may seem odd because, I mean, why wouldn't you just start going for your other plays and then just wait so you can get more materials on your Appaloosa potentially? Well, just you wait. Because we're now going to overlay both our Cobalt Sparrow and our Nerval into our Recital Starling, and we're actually going to be doing something very interesting, and we're going to be activating the effect of Recital Starling on Summon, targeting the Appaloosa to make it gain an additional 600 attack, now putting it at 2200 attack. I know that this combo is a lot more confusing and convoluted than the other ones, so please bear with me. Feel free to slow the video down if you need to, or pause it, because I mean, you can literally just do the slow-mo on YouTube. It's such a great feature for things like this. So now we have a Recital Starling and an Appaloosa with 2200 attack. What do we do now? Of course, we're going to activate the effect of our Recital, specifically detaching the Cobalt. It's very important that you detach the Cobalt and not the Nerval here. In this case, we're going to be adding our Celestine Wagtail from our deck to our hand. Now, of course, we have a Wing Beast and Sapphire with a target in hand, so now we're going to use the effect of our Sapphire, specialing itself in the Celestine, who will then trigger to add our Lyrilusc Bird Call. So now we're going to go these 2 into our second Recital, and now we're going to Chainlink 1 Recital Starling, targeting the Appaloosa to make it gain even more attack, and now we're going to go Chainlink 2 the effect given to it by Sapphire, targeting the Cobalt Sparrow in our graveyard to attach it to it as material. So now, not only is it going to gain the 600, it's actually going to gain an additional 300 because it has another material, meaning that your Appaloosa is now at 3100 attack, giving it a big beefy body, while also giving it an additional negate. Having it at 3100 attack, while it does not give it the exact 4th negate, it is literally 100 shy, it will make it a lot harder for your opponent to beat over it after baiting out 1 or 2 of the negates, which is a pretty popular tactic for Appaloosa. We can now activate the effect of this Recital. Now what we detach here doesn't really matter, but as long as we add our Lyrilusc Turquoise Warbler from our deck to our hand. Of course, we have 2 Recitals on board that we've used up, so what else are we going to be making that isn't our Utopic Future, followed by the summon of a Utopic Draco Future. Next up, we're actually going to use our Lyrilusc Bird Call because we have not yet, and we're going to add a, oops, that is the wrong card. I forgot to stack the top one here. We're going to add a Lyrilusc Beryl Canary from our deck to our hand, and then special summon our Turquoise Warbler from our hand because it has a different name. So keep in mind, Turquoise just has to be special from hand, period, and not just from its own effect in order to trigger. Therefore, we can activate the Turquoise to special summon from our graveyard, being the Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallow. Of course, now we're going to overlay both of these into our Lyrilusc Ensemblue Robin, who will then trigger to attach a thing from grave, and then don't forget to attach your Celestine as well, giving it a whopping 4 materials. So there you have it, Fraktall in any Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast, while a very complicated combo, does actually get you the same amount of disruptions as your regular Cobalt and Turquoise combo, or Turquoise and Celestine combo, except your Appaloosa is actually even bigger, and you have the Beryl Canary in your hand for follow-up for next turn to make something like, say, Divine Arsenal Zeus. However, what if this last random card in your hand happens to be Fraktall or a Tri-Brigade kit because we are playing 2? Well, because you haven't actually commit a normal summon throughout this entire combo, if this happens to be Tanky, Fraktall, or Kit, or etc., you can actually normal summon this, activate the effect of banishing Nerval, and then I like to banish the Bearbrum, it really doesn't matter. You can banish 2 more to summon your double Dragon Lords and get yet another disruption, and if this were a Kit specifically, you'd actually have that as your target to send for the double Dragon Lords, meaning that you'd get even more follow-up, even though Fraktall himself is already follow-up as well, because he can send himself from field. Again, this was a very complex combo compared to any of the other ones I will be showcasing, but it's such a strong combo, and I think it's very important to know how a hand that looks like just mediocre or a brick can turn out to be one of the strongest end boards you can possibly make in the deck. On the topic of bricks and bad hands though, let's take a look at this hand. It's Beryl Canary and Cobalt Sparrow, which is whatever in hand. It doesn't matter, you don't need any extra cards. So what if I told you that this hand that looks terrible still ends on 5 disruptions, protection, and using minimal resources with follow-up in hand. Well, it may seem a bit strange, but trust me when I say that this actually isn't bad at all, especially if you are doing the Ensemblue plays over the Arclight. It's one of the main reasons why I went back to the Ensemblue. Well, we're gonna start by normal summoning our Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow. Keep in mind her effect will not trigger here, however we are going to link her off into our Salamangreat Almirage. And this is going to be the only link summon we do all turn, because we're going to be spending it Xyz locked after we activate the effect of Beryl Canary, targeting our Cobalt Sparrow, and special summoning both, locking us into Xyz from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. Now Cobalt Sparrow was special summoned, therefore we can now add our Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallow from our deck to our hand. Of course we have 2 level 1s on board, meaning we are going to immediately take these and go into our Recital Starling. Optionally, you can juice up Almirage if you feel like it, just in case you get hit by something, I don't know. But it's just going to out itself from the field anyway, so like might as well try not to like waste a Ghost Ogre, protect with the Almirage, whatever. But we're going to activate the effect of our Recital Starling, detaching basically anything, to add our Lyrilusc Celestine Wagtail from our deck to our hand. And now, of course, Wing Beast, Sapphire Swallow, special summon, activating the effect of Celestine to add our Bird Call. Next, we're going to go into another Recital Starling, activating the effect, detaching anything, to add our Turquoise Warbler, similar to our last combo. Of course, 2 used up recitals are nothing better than for our Utopic Future, and then followed by our Utopic Draco Future, that's Disruption number 1. Now we're going to activate our Bird Call, again, sorry if I am going a bit fast, slow down if you need to. And we are going to use this to add another Beryl Canary, or literally any other Lyrilusc in case you accidentally draw the other one, or if you're only playing the one, just as long as you're not grabbing a Turquoise Warbler, because now we're going to special the Turquoise Warbler from our hand, triggering the effect, of course, special summoning the Sapphire Swallow from our graveyard, and now we're going to overlay both of these for an Ensemblue Robin, triggering the effect to attach anything from our graveyard, it doesn't really matter, and then using the Celestine as well, bringing it up to a whopping 4 materials and 5 disruptions total on your end board, with Almirage to give it protection from being destroyed by card effects, and with the Beryl Canary in your hand, for the follow-up next turn in case you need to make a Zeus. Granted, this is a pretty weak end board when it comes to things like, say, Forbidden Droplet, but it's still very strong for what it is, at least for what you turned it, your bad hand into. Not to mention, if you are playing hand traps, you could also have a handful of hand traps, because this was done off of 2 cards, and even if they don't manage to kill you, or if they don't manage to kill you, you still again have that Beryl Canary for the follow-up, and if your entire board is broken, including the Ensemblue getting sent to grave, a cool thing you can do is you can Ensemblue add back the Turquoise Warbler, and then if your board's completely empty, you can special the Turquoise, special the Cobalt from grave, or at least use it to bait out and negate, but if they don't have anything to stop it, you can actually just end up going not only full combo, but also being able to have the OTK potential, because you get access to your Tri-Brigade portion this time. And believe it or not, that is actually the end of the Ensemblue combo portion of the video, or portion of the combo section, I should say. So let's go ahead and showcase another cool way you can play the deck, and that is with Herald of the Arclight. Alright, we have now reached the Arclight section of the combo portion of this video. Hopefully the angle's a bit fixed now, by the way, because I looked at the footage after importing it into Premiere and I realized that it was all kind of crooked. So I do apologize for that. I'll try to fix that in post if that is an option. But I hope it's better now because we are getting into the Arclight section. So the Arclight portion also utilizes the Tri-Brigade Revolt most of the time, and typically it's used as more of a mid-range version of the deck, utilizing your combos a bit more, I guess a bit more conservatively compared to the Lyrilusc ones, where you just you sacrifice follow-up for a bunch of power on your end board, while also being a little bit weaker to board breakers. While the end board for this version is typically not as strong in most situations, it's only 5 disruptions at most points. However, it gives you so much more follow-up and also has access to an Omni Negate, as well as a powerful Floodgate for a deck like Tier this format. And what better way than to showcase with the Bread and Butter combo, this time as well, being Turquoise and Cobalt. It is a very, very common hand. So of course, what else are you going to start off doing except by special summoning your Turquoise, activating her effect to special summon Cobalt. You're going to activate the effect of Cobalt, and you used to add the Nerval here, However, you're actually going to be adding a Celestine Wagtail this time. Next, we're going to take both of these and make a Recital Starling, activating the effect of Recital Starling, detaching the Turquoise Warbler, and adding the Sapphire Swallow from deck to hand this time. Just like usual, we're going to activate the effect of Sapphire, special summoning itself and the Celestine from our hand, triggering the Celestine to add, of course, Bird Call. Here we're going to overlay into our second Recital, activating the effect now, detaching to search finally for our Tri-Brigade Nerval. So typically here we're seeing the two Recitals and we're going to go into our Draco future, right? Well, that's actually not the case this time. Instead, we're actually going to link both of these away, putting themselves and all their materials into the graveyard to summon Tri-Brigade Farragut to our extra monster zone. Next up, you can either use the Farragut effect to try and bait an Imperm, or you can normal summon because you don't need to commit your normal summon to this combo. I'm just going to special summon with the Farragut, and we're going to summon our Nerval directly from our hand. And now we're going to activate the effect of our Nerval, banishing 4 this time. I should probably mention that because you are utilizing the Revolts in this combo, you actually will need to play at least 2 Shurig for this particular build if you want to go for these combos. But we're going to use the Nerval to banish 4, banishing the 2 Recitals, the Turquoise and the Sapphire Swallow. It doesn't really matter because we aren't going for the Ensemblue as much. However, putting like things engraved that could help you for your Zeus plays or for your follow-up plays is better than having the extra materials given by the Sapphire. But we are going to banish 4 from the Nerval to summon our Tri-Brigade Shurig right here under our Farragut. Of course, no effective Shurig to banish. Next, we are going to do something similar to the Karis and the Shurig play earlier, and this time linking the Nerval and the Shurig into our Tri-Brigade Beryl, whose effect will actually come into play this time. And now we get to trigger 2 different search effects here. I like to go Chainlink 1 Shurig, Chainlink 2 Nerval, because Nerval can add any Tri-Brigade, whereas Shurig can add any Tri-Brigade or any other thing, so you'd rather have that protected if your opponent wants to Ash. So we are going to use our Nerval to add our Tri-Brigade Karis, and we're going to use our Shurig to add our Fabled Cerberel. So next up, we are going to activate the effect of our Tri-Brigade Karis in our hand, discarding the Fabled Cerberel for cost in order to special summon itself from our hand. The mandatory effect of Fabled Cerberel will activate, attempting to special summon itself from the graveyard because it was discarded. Keep in mind that this is a light monster, so it is a very good bestial target for your opponent. That's why I usually prefer to use this during games 2 and 3, for not only when people are more likely to have board breakers, but also when people are more likely to side out bestials against you, because they realize that they don't do much, and then you kind of like jump scare them with this. But you're going to use the Cerberel in order to special summon itself back to the side of the field, and now you're going to activate the effect of your Karis, banishing the Nerval and the Shurig, in order to special summon your Ancient Warrior's Oath Double Dragon Lords. Now, keep in mind that Fabled Cerberel is a level 2 tuner, and so we're going to use the Fabled Cerberel and the Karis to summon our Herald of the Arclight. So I didn't get to explain this as much as I would have liked to because it wasn't in the actual extra deck, but Herald of the Arclight is a very powerful card that makes up for its small stats by being a walking floodgate, saying that every monster sent from the hand or main deck to the graveyard is banished instead, which is very perfect for the tier matchup for both the Shizu cards and Sharon, as well as all of their mill effects. But it also serves as an Omni-Negate for that matchup and for other matchups by simply tributing itself to negate the activation and destroy it. It also searches a ritual if it's sent to the grave, but like we don't play any of those, so we mainly just want to focus on the first 2 effects. Finally, in order to wrap up this combo, we are going to use our Farragut and our Beryl in order to make our Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, this time with 2 materials, triggering the effect of Beryl and optionally the effect of Farragut, but mainly we want to use the Beryl in order to add our Tri-Brigade Revolt, and then we can put either any card back on the bottom of our deck from our hand, but I did add the Bird Call in order to show it as an example. In case all of the other cards in your hand are really good, you don't need that additional card in hand that you used to for this combo because you natively search it with the combo. So off of 2 cards in your hand, being the Turquoise and the Cobalt, you end on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disruptions, being 2 monster negates, a targeting bounce for any face-up card, which is really good for protecting your Floodgate and Omni-Negate, so technically you can kind of count it as an additional disruption, or like 2 or whatever, depending on how you count the Floodgate. And then you also get the Revolt, which will not only summon back, say, things like your Nerval. If there's still something in your zone, you summon back the Farragut, because the Farragut and the Beryl were both properly summoned, and then you can summon back like your Sapphire Swallow, and you can use all of these in order to access your Shurig. I'm too lazy to grab my other one, so you're going to access your second Shurig from your extra deck, so that'll not only give you a non-targeting banish as a disruption, but it'll also let you search off of the effect of the Nerval in order to grab something like a Fraktall, which let me go ahead and just find one in the deck. It'll grab you a Fraktall for the follow-up, which can give you a free access code. And that's not even all, because if you haven't used the double Dragon Lords by the time that you use the Revolt, you can actually send the Shurig for cost for your double Dragon Lords, because while yes, you do lose the second Shurig, and you lose the big body and extra banish next turn that he gives you, he actually does get to trigger his effect to search, meaning that you can add, say, something like a Beryl Canary from your deck in order to get a really free Zeus next turn on top of the access code you're already getting off of your Fraktall. So as you can see, while it is less disruptions total, it is a lot more powerful in terms of the follow-up that you get, because even though your opponent might not be able to play through the first boards with the Ensemblue stuff, you might not actually have enough to kill them afterwards, so this could end up being a lot better, as well as especially being against something like Tyr due to the Arclight. But I also think that this is better to go for games 2 and 3 specifically, because Arclight is just so strong against cards like Lightning Storm and Evenly Matched, or even Triple Tactics Talent, which are running rampant right now. And because this is a bit more mid-range than, say, the Ensemblue Combos, you actually get to utilize this combo with other cards in your hand, whereas, technically you would have to play a little bit around it, or maybe not get as many disruptions if you open like a Bird Call instead of a Turquoise or something, because you need the Bird Call throughout your combo. You can actually do this combo with Bird Call or Fraktall in your hand, replacing the Turquoise or the Cobalt. Well, with the Fraktall replacing the Cobalt, or with Bird Call replacing either. And especially if you open something like the Fraktall instead of the Cobalt, you can actually banish this instead of the Sapphire Swallow, which will make your follow-up a little bit easier, because you don't have to rely on the Revolt. And the Revolt is just so strong regardless, because even if you get hit by something like Dark Ruler, or by something like Evenly Matched, you can just keep the Revolt and basically still have at least a disruption and plenty of follow-up, because even if this is Dark Ruler, you can still send for cost. But you get all of that follow-up so you can at least play on the next turn, which can technically help you given that you still have 3 cards in hand, so you may still be able to win on the crackback. So much like the Ensemblue Combos, you can actually do the same combo, except actually make it a little stronger if you open Celestine instead of Cobalt, or, you know, if you send Celestine off of Fraktall instead of Cobalt. Admittedly, it doesn't give you as much protection as opening Cobalt does, because Cobalt getting that targeting protection is really good for securing at least that one recital. However, it does end up actually getting you a stronger end board, which is pretty funny. So, of course, we're going to start off by special summoning our Turquoise Warbler, using the effect to special our Celestine, who will then add the Bird Call from our deck to our hand. Sorry that the angle may keep shifting a little bit. I am trying to get it to look as best as possible. I don't want it to look super scuffed with how much work I'm putting into this breakdown. But just like the Ensemblue combo, we're going to overlay these into a recital, who will then detach a material in order to search a Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow. Let me move this a little bit closer. Now we're going to activate our Bird Call, adding our Sapphire Swallow from deck to hand, and special summoning the Cobalt Sparrow from our hand. Activating the effect of Cobalt Sparrow, adding our Nerval from our deck to our hand, and then activating the Sapphire, special summoning both itself and the Nerval from our hand. Next, we're going to overlay the Cobalt and the Sapphire into our second copy of Recital, activating the effect of our Recital, detaching to add a DD Crow, because we actually get a free choice on what we search here, with the Beryl Canary not mattering due to the lock. And we're going to follow this up by linking both of these Recital Starlings into our Farigate the Barren Blossom, activating the effect of our Nerval, banishing both Recitals, the Turquoise and the Sapphire, or a Fraktall in case you open the Fraktall instead, going into our Shurig, linking the Nerval and the Shurig into our Bearbrum, triggering Chainlink 1 Shurig, Chainlink 2 Nerval, adding the Karis and the Fabled Cerberel respectively, activating the Karis, discarding the Fabled Cerberel to special summon to our field, triggering the Cerberel's mandatory effect, special summoning it from grave, activating Karis, banishing Nerval and the Shurig, summoning our double Dragon Lords, synchro summoning using the Cerberel and the Karis into our Herald of Arclight, linking our Farigate and our Bearbrum into our Appaloosa with 2 negates, triggering the Bearbrum and potentially the Farigate, adding Revolt, and if you wish, you could put the DD Crow back, but in order to make this a quote-unquote stronger end board, we just pretend that we have another card in our hand to put back, which obviously we will, because this was only 2 cards that got us here so far. And so basically, with that extra random card in hand gone, you end off on the exact same end board. However, you also manage to have a DD Crow, which granted you can't activate under Arclight, but it doesn't matter anyway because as long as you have the Arclight up, you won't really have a need for the DD Crow as much because it kind of just fulfills the same job. But as soon as this hits the grave, either by it being destroyed by something or by it using its negation, you still have the DD Crow as an extra disruption, which is really good, of course, against Tyr in case they out it. So those were just the most basic of the Arclight combos, which can be done with basically like some of the least specific hands that you can have in the deck, but some more complex ones that can utilize the other packages that I have mentioned before can also be done in the deck. So with this, all you'll need, again, is Turquoise and Cobalt, starting off like any other combo, specialing your Turquoise, using her effect to summon your Cobalt, Cobalt of course adding your Celestine Wagtail, overlaying both of these into a Recital Starling, whose effect will then activate, detaching the Turquoise to add a Sapphire. I say Turquoise because, like, again, it's the most expendable, it doesn't actually matter what you detach, but you're going to activate the effect of your Sapphire to special summon both of these from your hand, triggering the Celestine to add your Bird Call, overlaying both of these into another Recital Starling, activating the effect of Recital, detaching anything to add your Nerval. It seems very standard here, however, we're actually going to take our Recitals and overlay them for our Utopic Future, and then subsequently our Utopic Draco Future. These two combos that I will be showing you are for the people that really like the Draco Future package and really don't feel like they can go without it, or maybe even you just want some Bestial protection, because this is really good to protect your Fabled Cerberel from a Bestial, even with something like Nibiru not running around in the format. That is a good use for it. Just watch out for Super Poly, because all of your end boards can be Super Polyed. But regardless, you are then going to normal summon your Nerval, activating the effect, banishing all 4 of your Lyrilusc from your graveyard, to summon your Tri-Brigade Shurig. Then you're going to link your Nerval and your Shurig into a Farragut this time, triggering, of course, both Shurig and Nerval, adding your Karis and your Fabled Cerberel. You're going to activate the effect of your Karis, discarding your Cerberel, to special summon the Karis to your field, triggering the Cerberel here. This is where you could protect it from a potential Druid Swarm, Serenir, or Magnemite, but you will then be special summoning it to your field, activating the effect of your Karis, banishing your Shurig and your Nerval, to summon your Tri-Brigade Bearbrum. This is like one of the only times where you actually use the effect to summon Bearbrum instead of hard making her. You're then going to Synchro Summon using your Karis and your Cerberel into a Herald of the Arclight, and then finally you're going to use Farragut and Bearbrum in order to make a 2-negate Appaloosa, which will then trigger your Bearbrum, allowing you to add your Revolt, putting either the Bird Call or any other card from your hand onto the bottom of your deck, leaving you with a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disruptions, whereas the Draco Future essentially does the job of the Double Dragon Lords, except protecting your Cerberel and also being a negate rather than just a bounce. Granted, the Double Dragon Lords is better in certain situations because it does protect your Arclight from being destroyed by battle. However, this is also really good in case, again, not only do you want to stop Bestials, but you can also stop any other important monster effects your opponent may have, even after using the effect on your turn. Personally, I don't really like this end board as much, as usually it's really easy to get super polyed here because they just use the Draco Future and the Arclight, and while your other combos can also get super polyed, you'd rather keep the Arclight on board after that super poly resolves to force your opponent to either use their new Garura or Mud Dragon or whatever in order to be over the Arclight, rather than having to just fuse the Arclight off and then go combo anyway. But I still think this is a very strong end board, albeit if you are playing the Draco Future package, you will have to get rid of a good amount of things from your extra deck that could be potential resources, which is why when I go the Arclight path, unless I'm siding it in, I typically prefer to not play the Draco Future at all. Of course, it wouldn't be a Turquoise Cobalt combo without me showcasing you how to also do it using Celestine Wagtail. So of course we're going to start with our Turquoise, using her effect to special our Celestine, triggering to add our Bird Call, overlaying into Recital. Sorry that I'm going really fast, but it is just that simple. Using the Recital, detaching the Turquoise to add your Cobalt, activating your Bird Call, adding your Sapphire and specialing your Cobalt, activating your Cobalt to add your Nerval, Sapphire effect, special summoning both Sapphire and Nerval, overlaying both of these for the Recital Starling, activating the effect, detaching to add your DD Crow, overlaying both of these into your Utopic Future, and then subsequently your Utopic Draco Future, activating your Nerval, which actually didn't need to have the normal summon committed this time, so again, Celestine being slightly better here, even if a bit more risky, but you're going to be banishing all 4 of your Lyriluscs in order to summon your Shurig, Of course, linking Nerval and Shurig into your Farragut, triggering the effects of both Shurig and Nerval, adding your Karis and adding your Fabled Cerberel. Karis effect, discarding Fabled Cerberel to special, triggering Fabled Cerberel to special. Karis effect, banishing both Shurig and Nerval to summon Berbrum. Synchro summoning using the Karis and the Cerberel into your Herald of the Arclight, and then linking the Berbrum and the Farragut to summon your Appaloosa, giving it 2 materials, adding your Revolt from your deck to your hand off of your Berbrum, and then either putting back the DD Crow or any other card in your hand that you do not wish. Again, getting a little bit stronger of an end board here should you keep the DD Crow, as well as allowing you to commit your normal summon to something else in case you get hand trapped, albeit being a little bit more risky on the very first Recital effect because it does not have the Cobalt protection. So now that we are on to the Arclight combos, longtime viewers of the Bird Up stuff on my channel will definitely know what's going on here. Again, this is Fraktall plus any Beast, Warrior, or Wing Beast except for Fabled Cerberel, and then any 2 cards in hand, with the third being shown for later. So this will essentially end on almost the exact same end board as you typically do for the Arclight combos, without the Draco Future and going for the Double Dragon Lords instead. However, you won't actually get the Double Dragon Lords without a certain other thing in hand that I will mention. So we're going to activate the effect of Fraktall first, sending our Tri-Brigade Kit from our deck, triggering the effect of Kit to send our Nerval, and triggering Nerval to add our Karis. Of course, now we're going to activate the effect of our Karis, discarding our DD Crow, or any Beast, Warrior, or Wing Beast, I just had the DD Crow for example, to special summon itself from our hand, activating the effect on field, playing a big risk here by banishing all 4, to summon our Tri-Brigade Shurig, the Ominous Omen. Linking the Shurig and the Karis into our Tri-Brigade Berbrum here, and this is a familiar sight from the last combo with Fraktall and any Beast, Warrior, or Wing Beast. However, it's going to be a little bit different here, because we're going to use the effect of Shurig, but we're going to add our Fabled Cerberel. So now here is where we activate the effect of Berbrum to discard 2 cards to summon one of our banished monsters, but instead of discarding our 2 random cards, we're actually going to discard 1 random card, this time just being a Lightning Storm, as well as the Fabled Cerberel, to special back the Tri-Brigade Kit. So then, of course, we're going to trigger the effect of Fabled Cerberel to special summon itself back to the field. And now, because we haven't used Kit, we've only used Karis, we can use the effect of Kit, banishing the Shurig and the Karis, in order to summon a Tri-Brigade Farragut. Very simple from here, we're going to take the Cerberel and the Kit, because she is also a level 2, and we're going to summon our Herald of the Arclight, and we're then going to take our Farragut and our Berbrum, making an Appaloosa with 2 materials, triggering the effect of Berbrum to add our Tri-Brigade Revolt, and placing a card from the hand on the bottom of the deck. So off of Fraktall and any Beast, Warrior, or Wing Beast plus 2 random cards out of our hand, we end on 1, 2, 3, 4 disruptions, which isn't very much. However, we do still get that follow-up off of the Revolt, and Arclight and Appaloosa are still formidable threats along with the non-targeting Banish. Half the time, at least back during like Difo format, where decks couldn't play through as many disruptions, it was definitely enough back then, and maybe if you can protect the Arclight with the Shurig Banish, you might be able to get a game against Tyr here. However, what if the last card in your hand is a Nerval or a Fraktall, this time being Nerval instead of the Kit? Well, let's rewind a little bit, because instead of going straight for the Appaloosa here, we're going to have the Berbrum and the Farragut still on board, and we're going to either use the effect of Farragut, or we're going to commit our normal summon that we didn't use, and then using the Nerval, we're going to banish the Kit and the Cerberel from our grave to summon our Double Dragon Lords. If I can find it in my extra deck, there it is. And now we can take the Nerval, the Farragut, and the Berbrum and go into our Appaloosa, but this time the Appaloosa has 3 negates, meaning that you actually managed to commit your entire hand to make an even stronger end board than usual. But wait, that's actually not the most you can do. What if instead of Nerval, the card in your hand, or instead of Nerval or Fraktall, the card in your hand is a Cobalt Sparrow? So let's go ahead and rewind a little bit there, putting the Appaloosa back into the extra deck, putting the Double Dragon Lords into the extra deck, Berbrum goes back on board, Farragut goes back on board, Nerval goes back in deck, and then Kit and Cerberel go back in grave. So now, because again, you didn't use Farragut effect or a normal summon this entire combo, meaning you can use the Farragut here to special summon your Cobalt, triggering the effect of Cobalt to add Tri-Brigade Nerval, normal summoning the Tri-Brigade Nerval, activating effect, banishing the Cerberel and the Kit in order to access our Double Dragon Lords, And the really cool thing here is that you can take the Cobalt Sparrow and the Nerval, and you can actually overlay into a non-targetable Ensemblue Robin, and then take your Farragut and your Bearbrum to go into your Appaloosa for 2 negates. But this is by far one of the strongest end boards that Bird Up can make of all time, because you end on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 disruptions, which is actually less than most of the Ensemblue combos. However, it has a lot more follow-up, and it has a lot more diversity, while also being completely immune to something like, say, Forbidden Droplet, because Arclight prevents the Droplet from being activated if they were to send the monsters. Back before Recital Starling came back to 2 copies, I would actually frequently make this end board as much as I could, because it was just so good, and most opponents could not get rid of it. Even with Dark Ruler, they'd still have to go through the Revolt summoning the Shurig, which would then give me the follow-up Fraktall, as well as Double Dragon Lord still sending for cost. Even though his effect is negated, the Shurig will still grab a Beryl Canary, meaning that I could go for an Access Code and a Zeus next turn, which, as long as one of these survives, it typically is enough to kill the opponent. Unfortunately, with the second Recital, I just had to cut the Ensemblue from the extra deck, at the time at least, but now I am siding the Arclight instead of maining it, and so I do have that little bit of extra room in my extra, no pun intended there, but I can still make something very similar, just without the Revolt, because I am no longer playing the Revolt. I might honestly, if I found room in the extra for the second Shurig, I'd probably go for the Revolt, to be fair, but I just can't as long as I'm maining the Bearbrum. But everybody, that is going to be it for the combo section of the video. If you have any combos yourself that are pretty powerful as well, be sure to leave them in the comments if you want to let me know. I'm always super open to seeing more combos. I literally playtest with this deck almost every single day, trying to lab new combos and see what I can come up with. Hence how I came up with this combo, as well as the other Fraktall and any Beast Warrior or Wing Beast combo, because it's just so much fun to see what you can do with this deck, especially due to the amount of diversity you can have on your end board, especially if you're doing the Revolt and the Arclight plays. Stay strapped in though, because the combos aren't going to be the end of the video. We still have plenty more to talk about, and so I'll see you when we get there. Thank you for watching the combos. Alright, that just about does it for the combo section of the video. So, funnily enough, as I was editing the combos that I showed, I found out like 2 more combos that are fairly similar, that both, I believe, revolve around Fraktall Turquoise or Cobalt Turquoise, which is really funny. They're not any that I'm going to be adding to the video later on or anything like that. However, they are listed on my Word document that I used for this video, which I might end up releasing at some point. But regardless, I hope you all did enjoy the combos. I worked really hard to find out most of them myself, and then some of them, of course, I did find from other very passionate Bird Up players, so shoutouts to them. But that isn't going to do it for the entirety of the video just yet. I still have a few things that I would like to talk about the deck for the people that aren't really used to it yet, that being the pros and the cons. So keep in mind, the pros and cons will not only just be for the deck in general, but also specifically for the format we currently find ourselves in, and I do believe I have some on here for the next format involving Castra as well, so they might be a little bit dated, however, they should still mostly apply. But anyway, starting off with the pros, so the first one being that it has a fairly strong tier limit matchup overall. So while the Ishizu shufflers and other things like that can be quite annoying for your graveyard, as long as they are still milling your graveyard as well, you are still at least having some form of advantage in there, especially if they're milling things like Kit or Nerval on their turn if they're going first. But mainly the fact that you can set up so much hate for the graveyard, be it with your DD Crows, with her Svelger, or just for Appaloosa, which is really good against tier in general, it ends up being a fairly strong deck to play against tier limit, even though sometimes, depending on your hand, it can be overwhelmed. And of course, the searchable DD Crow helps with your graveyard matchups in general. Very good against something like, say, Math Mech at the time during Power of the Elements format. Another one is that your end board has some pretty nice flexibility to it. Like, you can end on a variety of different things, and the 2 combos that I mentioned that I actually am not going to be putting in the video is literally one of the best examples of the flexibility of the end board, being that you can take basically all of your different end board pieces and sort of combine them in any way you want. It's like taking a bunch of different Lego sets and then just combining them into whatever you feel like, rather than actually what's in the box. Like, you can end on any combination of like Draco Future, Hersvelger, DDL, your Ensemblue Robin, your Revolt, Appaloosa. Like, you can end on literally almost any combination that you feel like, as long as you don't get too ahead of yourself, and that is something that does make the deck very strong against certain matchups, because you can prepare for one matchup with one end board while going for a different end board for a different matchup. The deck is also really good at playing through boards going second, and this also extends to playing through hand traps a little bit, but mostly, there are plenty of examples in which I specifically, I don't know about other people, this is gonna sound like super fucking arrogant, but I've been able to play through massive end boards or full power end boards, but as long as I have like one card, you know, like 1-for-1, Beryl Canary, etc., that can play through that final little piece, and that can at least allow me to get either a Zeus or an access code, you can just very easily go through end boards like it's nothing. Just make sure you try to use your stuff wisely, because shotgunning certain things or not preparing for certain things can end up spelling doom for you, and then also it is a bit unfortunate if you do draw multiple things with the same name, because I've noticed that most of the time when I do break through end boards, it's because everything in my hand at least did something. With that regard, OTKs are incredibly easy to pull off in this deck. Again, Fraktall is literally a 1-card combo into a guaranteed 5300 attack access code with a pop, which is fantastic. And then not only that, but being able to go into Assembled Nightingale and all of your other Lyrilusc OTK methods is very strong as well, off of just 1 or 2 cards. That also means that making Zeus is just an afterthought for the deck. It's literally something that you can just slap down whenever you feel like it, which is another great way to play through end boards, especially in combination with board breakers such as Dark Ruler No More. As I mentioned, it is fairly resilient to hand traps. This carries over to the Duel monsters, which really only affect certain hands, such as when you open Fraktall in any Beast Warrior or Wing Beast, if that Beast Warrior or Wing Beast happens to be DD Crow, or if they happen to hit your Shurig midway through the combo. It can be annoying if you don't have any other way to get anything in the graveyard, not to mention that if you go for the Fabled Cerberell, if you don't go for the Draco Future, it could be very frustrating to get it hit by a Magnemite. But overall, the rest of the deck really does not care about Duels at all, which is really funny because it ends up making my opponent side them out, and they end up bricking on them game 1. Finally, it does not care about Barrier Statue, which is super prominent in Fluandereeze, and will be prominent as well in certain builds of Kashtira, because they can go into like the Raid Raptor Arsenal Falcon. But it's just really good because having all of the Lyrilusc monsters, and as well as Nurgle, plus things like Velger or Double Dragon Lords in your extra deck, it just makes it super easy to play through Barrier Statue. Like, honestly, the M-Pin is much more of a threat than the actual Barrier Statue itself is, but at that point, all you have to do is just make Zeus. That is it for just some of the pros I managed to find for the deck. Now, on to the cons, because there is no deck with no cons. So, admittedly, it is a bit harmed by or dies to common threats this format, such as Dimension Shifter, Necro Valley, etc. Certain hands can help you play through these. For example, opening Turquoise and Cobalt can be really good for playing through something like Necro Valley. And then also Dimension Shifter, your Lyrilusc cards can kind of facilitate a end board through that, typically being a Utopic Draco Future, but admittedly you do lose a little bit of advantage from your graveyard. Also, without committing to something like Arclight or side decking something like Solemn Judgment, board breakers will absolutely ruin your day, and even with something like Arclight, it really doesn't matter if your opponent has a Dark Ruler, and then even with Judgment, it doesn't matter if they have something like Super Poly. The shuffles from Mudora and Keldo, again, can be fairly bothersome, especially in matchups like Tier, where they're already making an overwhelming end board anyway. The best you can do is to try and manage your resources properly, with going for more Link 2s rather than going for like 3s or 4s constantly. But with that in mind, you can burn out of resources quickly, and I don't necessarily mean your graveyard resources, but what I do mean is that your extra deck uses up a good amount of itself during your combo, sometimes even up to half of it, meaning that you only have so much room for toolbox cards because the extra deck is just so tight. And so if you burn through those resources, especially if you manage to get hit by something like Nibiru, which wastes them, then you can end up just running out of things in your extra deck. And of course, there's no main deck boss monsters for the deck, meaning that it can be lights out for you. Zeus Turbo is fantastic overall, but this particular format is not the best, mainly given by the fact that Tier Limit really could not care less, and then with Kashtira coming soon, it is an amazing card against them, but that means that they're just going to use Diablosis to rip it out of your extra deck as frequently as possible. Again, the extra deck is very tight, it just leaves such little room for flex spots such as Underworld Goddess, the Nightmare cards, or anything like that. That can be good for native board breaking that doesn't end up using your Beast Warrior or Wing Beast materials from the graveyard. Even something like Dawn or Dagger for Hire would be a really good flex spot for a utility card that you can actually make with your Tri-Brigade effects, but it is just very frustrating that you can't make the room for it. Konami 20 card extra deck when. Also, the locks given to you by cards like Barabrum, Beryl Canary, and the Tri-Brigades can be kind of annoying at times, and they can conflict with certain plays that would otherwise just outright win you games. For example, sometimes if you have the Fraktall and like your Appaloosa left on board, well, you can't go Fraktall, make Velger, and then use Velger and Appaloosa for an access code, so have like a 6300 attack access code, which would actually end up pushing you for game. Unfortunately, you just can't do that because you can only use Beast Beast Warrior or Wing Beast as link material that turn, meaning that it can end up preventing you from winning games at times. Those are just a handful of the pros and cons that I could find for the deck, particularly for this format. Let me know if you found any more down in the comments below. Of course, there is always way more to put on either side, so be sure to let me know if there was one that you thought of that wasn't listed on these lists. But y'all, with that out of the way, I do believe that that might be some of the final bits that I need to say about the bird up strategy. I'm going to move on to some of my final thoughts, mainly just what I think about the deck overall, how I think about it this format in particular, and how to get better with the deck. So of course, I absolutely love Bird Up. It is probably my favorite deck of all time, so I am a bit biased when I say that this deck is actually very strong. People seem to underestimate it, especially when it comes to actually reading what the effects do, and so you'll be able to steal games based on that, but also just based on the power level, because you can easily play through disruptions more than people actually end up thinking. I've had a lot of people tell me that the deck sucks through hand traps, but like, I think they just need to get better. But the power level of the deck is much higher than people like to give it credit for, mainly just due to how many combos that you can actually do. In this particular format, it does have its issues, again, Zeus not being as effective against Tyr, while being one of the main quote-unquote win conditions of the deck. However, it does still have its good matchups. Again, the Sprite matchup and the Fluanderies matchups are actually very strong for you, even with the Sprite players and Flu players using Dimension Shifter, so you can easily find yourself or other Bird Up players getting to higher tables with ease. And I've had a lot of people ask me, or at least a good handful of people, ask me how to get better with the deck specifically, and y'all, it's really just all about practice. Like, again, I said earlier that I'm testing new combos every single day. Well, maybe not every single day, but I was on a streak for a while where I was just doing test hands constantly. And that's really all you need to do. For just about any deck in Yu-Gi-Oh!, just reading your cards, finding out what they do and how they interact with each other, even without a testing group, that's gonna end up winning you more games than anything. I know so many people, including friends on the channel such as MRocket, who have picked up Bird Up and then ended up dropping it or just still not knowing how to play it properly because all they know is how to do the combos that I show in my videos without actually taking the nuances of the deck into account. But that does bring me to the point of having a good testing group. This also goes for just about any deck in the game. Like, all you need to do is just practice, 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 and honestly, not only can you play just about any deck in the game, but you can definitely get very good with the Bird Up strategy. But I really don't know what else to say here. I think that might be it for my final thoughts on my Bird Up deck profile / breakdown, and that might be it for the breakdown period. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been a massive project for the channel and all of my channels in my YouTube career. I've done nothing nearly to the extent of this, both in terms of length and effort, and I don't think there's been anything else that I've been this passionate about. If there are any other decks that I usually use on my channel that you'd like to see an in-depth breakdown like this of, you know, I have things like Dinosaur and everything like that as well, then definitely tell me in the comments below, because I am more than happy to hear all of your thoughts on what you think I should do a breakdown on next. Maybe I'll try to make this like an every other month thing, because it is a lot of effort, but I do have so many different decks that I'd love to do a breakdown on, but I'll just have to see the reaction to this video. If you did like it though, please be sure to leave a like, as it helps put this video and the channel into YouTube recommended. It is the best thing you can do for the algorithm, and if you want to support the channel more than anything else for absolutely free, then perhaps consider subscribing so you can see more awesome Bird Up content and deck content in general from this channel. It is the best way that you can support me directly. But once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the video and that you can get some helpful advice for the Bird Up strategy. But once again, this is Aurora, signing off.